I don't know. It's been a fun Friday. Hello, everybody. This is Perch. I've got Ash with me. I've got Doc with me. It's sort of like a comic aficionados morning, but we're doing it Friday with drinks.
Yes, sir.
We much love out to Wes. I think he's got a big special event tomorrow, so that's why he's not doing an aficionados tomorrow. But at least I have you guys here, and we may get a couple other people jump by. But how you guys been both? Yeah, I'm all tongue tied. See, I've been drinking already. How have you both been doing?
I've been doing pretty good. I got a beer special. We got to call it the beer aficionados.
Yeah. Except I've got a margarita here today. So
well, there we go. We can come up with something. Maybe the chat can come up with something.
Yes.
It always feels like I'm wasting my time with the rest of the margarita and should just go straight to the tequila. That's the problem.
Just tequila by itself.
Yeah, because otherwise the rest of stuff's just getting in the way. But anyway, it's been a long day. How have you guys held up this week? Has it been? I mean, it's been brutal for me. I don't know about you guys.
It's been kind of tough. The heat has been really adding on to me. I don't. Oh, you're up north, so you're probably not quite as bad. But man, it's supposed to be 111 on Sunday. I was like,
no.
Yeah, and my air conditioning in my car just went out. I need to get the whole redone, which is it's a 2010, so I guess that's fine, but it's like right at the time when you need it most, and also it's not really in your budget to go blow $150 or however much it costs to refill your air conditioning.
Oh yeah,
dude, you could do it for like $40 with one of those cans.
I've been researching that, and I'll talk to you after stream maybe.
Yeah, I just did it on my buddy's car like 2 months ago.
Okay, we'll talk after stream then.
Car talk on Perch.
Yes.
Hey, no, it's so yeah. I don't have it nearly that bad. I think it's high 80s up here, but this area is so privileged, I guess, to have the nice 70-degree weather that it gets 75 and up, and everybody's just walking around dead.
Right. Yeah, I was like that when I lived in Colorado, and it would get to 80, 85, and people were just like, "Oh, I'm dying," and I was like, "Really?" It's I understand.
Well, dude, I'm in Pittsburgh. It's kind of the same way, except for our 85 feels like 103 because you also need scuba gear when you're outside because it's that humid.
The humidity is what kills you.
Yeah. But actually, tonight's going to be great. And tomorrow morning when I wake up, it's going to be like 55 degrees at 8 a.m. I'm like, this is dope. I'm going to go cut my grass.
Dope.
Brian.
Hello, Brian. We have got, so there's no way this is not a giant train wreck, but it's awesome. Thank you guys for joining us on a Friday night.
Everyone loves a good train wreck. Welcome, Brian.
Hey, thank you.
It's all good.
I got Guinness.
So you got a Guinness? Is that what you're drinking?
Yeah, I'm drinking Guinness tonight.
Do I ask you what you're drinking, Brian? Or
yes, I am drinking. Thank you for asking.
What are you drinking, sir?
This is better if you don't know.
All
right.
Yeah,
all right.
I've gotten on a Viking mead, so.
Yes.
That's one of the few things I've never tried when it comes to alcohol.
Oh, dude, my buddy used to make this great honey mead.
Mm-hmm.
He brewed it himself. 2 glasses of that, I was shit-housed.
Yep, that's how it be some days.
Yep. And he'd bring me a gallon of it. I'd be like, okay, well, I'm pretty much drunk for the next week if I drink this. So yeah.
The high humidity. I was down in Orlando and somebody was serving mead, and that combined with 90 weather and high humidity, it was brutal. And I can't do it. But anyway, all good stuff.
So what's the topic for tonight?
Well, a lot of things have happened today or this week. I mean, we got a brand new general manager of DC, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, the gay guy.
Is he gay? I didn't know.
I mean, that's what his profile thing said. I mean, I'm just going off of what I know.
No,
I did not know.
I think he just run with that stuff. I don't think so, but maybe.
Oh,
I don't know. He had his pronouns in his bio, so therefore I don't care.
All I saw was the big rainbow and the fist.
Yeah.
So
he's a fister.
Yeah, that's how those two go together. But anyway, what do you guys think? Do you think that this role is something DC has needed? Forget about the guy. We'll get to him in a minute. But that somebody who's kind of a controller or traffic cop, is this going to help DC? Do you think?
Maybe. I think they do need a traffic cop. I listened to some of the things. I can't determine these days whether it was your stream or Wes's, or because you guys kind of blend together. He's like your bosom buddies. But one of you were on it regardless, whatever. And you had made some points that I didn't entirely all agree with about him, but I did agree a lot about the points of needing the control. I do think actually that was one of the good things that Didio did. Love him or hate him or whatever complaints. I'm not here to defend the guy, but I was always on the side of like, hey, you know, when Didio was just being traffic cop and not being like stick his fingers in all the pots and mess around with all the creativity, when he was just making sure DC ran, it seemed to run. So I hope that this guy can do that, and he doesn't come in and be like, oh, and I'm also going to get all and tell you guys how to create this, and we're going to go this direction and this and that. Because I'm a little worried when you make your LinkedIn profile woke, that shows that you're not afraid to make your business side of you woke. Like you're not like reserved. It's not like that's my private life and these are my feelings that I keep separate from my workplace. This is my professional life too. My professional life is woke.
Well, and
I worry.
Yeah, I think it is interesting there, and this is where I think we got to have some more time play out. But if you look down in his interests and you look at some of the causes he's done and everything else, he is very active in economic justice and kind of some of these social issues.
So he's a commie.
Yeah, no, but I
sorry,
don't know how to describe this quite right. It feels like this is it's not like a hobby, but it's an interest. I'm not sure it's completely blended with his work, but in many ways, when you have that kind of interest inside of you, it is going to blend into your work. So it's a weird bag. The best thing I could say is you look at his interviews online, you see his personality. It really comes across in there, and it's a different thing. And by that I only mean it doesn't feel like some of the other people who've come in and really tried to make the company the cause. It feels different from that. Now that doesn't mean it doesn't go one way or another, but it feels like there's some different elements in play here to me.
All I want to know is, does this make Brian Michael Bendis go away?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Stick to the important things there, I suppose.
Yes, I'm sticking to the important shit right now.
I love you. That's why we love you, Doc. But speaking of traffic cops, I thought we were trying to defund the police. So
yeah, that's true. That's true. It could go wrong. No, I think I mean, you know, I think DC needs this role. It's interesting you said, because I think when Didio was focused, I think it also helped. I think almost when anyone, Joe Quesada, anybody in the big companies, when they focus on a plan, it seems to go better. And it's when everybody kind of takes their eye off the ball and starts looking at other things. That's when things seem to drift.
Wait, Perch. So you're saying that having a plan for your business is a thing you should do? Wait, hold on.
For your business.
Hold on.
We call that a business plan?
I was just
weird, isn't it?
That sounds like a great term. We should market this.
Oh man, it's just like get that like trademarked or something. We can make boo bucks.
There needs to be it's our TED Talk. You know, have a plan for your business, and it's amazing.
I'm flabbergasted by this idea. I feel like this is something that could catch on.
I think it could go places. Like if you got a place like all right, hear me out. If you had a place online that sold a bunch of stuff, like say you started out with books and then you had a business plan to expand it to like video and like bathroom toiletries and other crap.
We can call it Sahara.
Amazing.
Okay, I was thinking more desert, but rainforest sounds good.
Yeah, rainforest, like with trees, growth. That's the plan. Yeah, I think that would actually go somewhere.
Yeah, it's like you're out to make money and run a successful business, and when you focus on it, then you may be successful.
Is that how that works?
A tumbleweed goes by.
I've heard legends that once upon a time, ancient societies did this. but it's been lost in with time, and
And,
and no one today can prove it. Some people just chalk it up as fairy tale and myth.
Yeah,
but I believe
like Zeus and the Loch Ness monster and
Love.
like Amazons.
And
these women that people have talked about, these mythical
Amazon. That sounds great. We can call
Amazon.
it Amazon.
Yeah.
Amazons. Women. Like women could do anything.
See, that's how I tied that in. I was trying to tie that together.
I mean, it is. I always feel, and I understand why people will look at things, and I tried to cover that in the video. You come and you look at this stuff, you look at the background, trying to understand this person you don't know, and you see certain things pull out. And I would never put anything in the banner of my professional profile that was any kind of cause. I wouldn't do it at all, because I don't think it's the right place to put that kind of stuff, unless your professional work is like running one of those institutions. Like if you are the organizer for Black Lives Matter, then having a Black Lives Matter banner in your LinkedIn profile makes sense. But otherwise, it seems like tying those things together becomes distraction.
Yeah.
In many ways that we're distracted right now. But
if you're looking to go into that industry.
Yeah, sure. That's true.
Like you want to join the ADL, and you're a lawyer or something. Like you push that, like, hey, hire me. I'm all down with the business.
Yeah, it's like when my LinkedIn profile had just a big stacks of money. I was trying to tell people I would like money. It did not work, but that was the idea.
Yes.
Yeah. But what do you think? I mean, so this guy is aggressive. If you look at kind of his videos and kind of how he views business, and the part that I always keep coming back to, it sticks, is I've been to so many cons, so many places where Marvel is there, and Marvel always walks in with their chest puffed out, and they are the big people in the room. They're in charge. They're
Johnny Big Balls.
Them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm looking forward to, I don't really care what the background of the guy is. I want to see the show of the guy coming in from a rival company going, we're in charge, and really laying it down. I feel like that would be healthy for everybody.
Yes. You remind me of when I got back into comics. DC was launching this thing called New Age of Heroes. And I thought at the time, because I was a big Marvel guy up to this point, like I was just joined DC. I was like, hey, I'm the new guy at DC. This Marvel guys kicked me out, so I'm over here. And I love this New Age of Heroes. And then when it got all canceled and everything, and that went down that path, I was so critical. That's when I started to have these really strong critical thoughts towards Didio, because I was like, literally, DC in 2016 with Rebirth, you guys stole the market share. You were the number one. You had your boot on Marvel's neck. All you had to do was step down, and you decided, nah, we're just gonna back off. We're gonna stop this Rebirth thing. With this New Age of Heroes, which at the time Marvel was really dropping. They were going through their whole legacy stuff. They were dropping the ball, and DC essentially was kind of like a shot across the bow, saying, "Hey, we'll do Hulk better. We'll do our own version of Spider-Man. We'll do like if Marvel won't do it, come to us." Like you had this, and you just let go. And I'm like, that killer instinct is what I think you're describing. And I hope this Cherry guy has that. He's that kind of guy that's like, look, when we got Marvel by the balls, we're going to squeeze. Like,
I hope so. I think that helps Marvel. I mean,
it does. It helps fans, because it makes Marvel have to rise to the occasion. Like they can't just sit around and be like, yeah, we're just going to do whatever cooking show.
Well, I think one of Didio's big problems was he did have that, Johnny Big Balls demeanor, but only when it's things that were his projects, things that he was kind of the mastermind behind. Like anything that was successful that didn't come from him, he just had way too big of a goddamn ego to really like lean into it. And so he didn't. It was like he couldn't respect that something was successful for any reason other than because of him.
Yeah, like kind of going to use my own example here. Everyone here knows of Timothy Lamb and his Black Ops campaign, right?
Correct.
Right. So I try to participate in those as much as I humanly possibly can. So anytime I find like a new way of doing something, I immediately run to Tim like, hey, dude, I found this new thing. Is there any way you can slip this into your campaign and make yourself more successful? Right. So I'm always about like helping someone else be more successful because that's going to pay off for me in the back end. Didio didn't do any of that. He was more of the type like, oh, you're successful. Well, let me just put you in this corner over here, way back over here where people can't find you, so I can showcase my stuff because I should be the successful one. And that's really not the way it should be working.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that, well, I agree with you, first of all. I think part of that also kind of comes with insecurity. I think you're a confident person. You're secure in your own work and what you're doing. You don't feel like you need to drag other people down in order for you to succeed. Like you know your success is going to be based on your own merit and your own tenacity and efforts.
Also, boobs.
And boobs help.
Okay.
But my point is, you know, you can kind of see that there's clearly certain people out there that are like, look, if I do a good job, if I have the talent and I have the work ethic and I just have the motivation and I put all that together, I'm gonna succeed. So there's no reason. There's infinite number of slices to the pie. It's not like anyone has to miss out. But there's other people who are like, people get opportunities, that mean there's no more slices for me. And I feel that's the kind of the problem. And that comes, I see the insecure creators and the people that are in positions, possibly, you know, administrative positions at these publishers that just, you know, they're I think that this whole industry has kind of made everyone just like looking over their shoulder constantly, wondering, because we've seen the backstabbing.
What we're seeing
it's so middle school. It's hilarious.
It is, and we're seeing it on example right now. I mean, not to really change the subject because we'll get to it at some point, but the Keanu thing.
Yeah,
you know, the number of people that are basically pissing and moaning and like talking about how they're how booming some millionaire is taking, you know, money out of their pocket from their lesbian bike riding anthology or whatever the hell bullshit they're selling on Kickstarter that is not for the same audience that Berserker is. Because they're successful, they feel like anybody else that's successful, it's because they're stealing from someone else. They don't believe in the concept of making money, just distributing money.
I personally believe like there's no such thing as like you're stealing customers from me or you're stealing profit from me, whatever. Like your profit's based off of your own hard work or effort. I also believe in that, you know, the comic book industry as a whole should be more community based, right? So you'll hear me say this all the time. The more successful other people are means the more successful I could be in the future, right? So take any Indiegogo or Kickstarter or whatever crowdfunding campaign out there. The more successful those things are, the more successful I will be when I eventually do launch mine, you know? So it's in my best interest to make sure all those as many campaigns as possibly can are successful and not the opposite.
Yeah.
And I think to add on to that real quick, just to add on to that, I think there needs to be, Brian touched on this idea back in the comic book industry that the whole industry needs to succeed for everyone to succeed, because it is kind of a small little industry and it's gotten smaller since the early 90s. We can kind of all agree. And if we made it big, like let's say, I don't know, watch the video game industry blow up from the 80s, like now there's multi-billion-dollar, you know, there's billion-dollar franchises. It's not just companies. There's companies that are making billions of dollars just on a single games. And it used to be and mobile games, even like places you don't see it, but they're growing that industry. They're making it huge. So now there's tons of developers that are able to grow in it and say, hey, look at all this we can do. And if the comic industry could do the same, and they realize, like, look, if our product is awesome, that's going to entice people to come to this industry because we're making something great, you know. And then once those people come, that's a new potential audience that we can, you know, appeal to. And if the whole audience, if the audience for the across the board grows, that provides more opportunity for everyone working in the industry to tap that audience and say, hey, look, I got something that might interest you. I'm working really hard to make this. It provides you more. There was never going to be $1 billion video game until the industry grew to that level, right? Back in the 80s, there weren't no one even billion-dollar game, haha, funny, right? But the industry grew. If comics at one point in the 90s, in the early 90s, grew to where there could be $1 million comics, like million sellers of comics. Like people are like, million, what? This is comics. And then it grew.
Sure. And I think you guys are saying two things here. Both I think are true in that the first of all, the market has to grow. Kind of what Brian said, what Doc said, what Ash said. I think, if we want a million copy seller comics again, we're going to have to grow the market. We're going to have to grow where you can find those comics. It can't happen in its current spot. There's just realistically, there's just not enough finances. You could put out the most amazing comic ever. I would question at this point through the direct market, and obviously I participate in that myself. There's just, you can't have a consistent million copy selling comic, I think, of anything with that channel alone now. Could you?
Not right now, no. But I'm speaking in hypotheticals, right?
Just
but concept
is good. I think that you're right, because I do think there are ways to grow that out, and I do think the Keanu Kickstarters and the reality is, it made as much money as it did because it reached new people. I don't believe that money, some of it, sure, but I don't believe a lot of that money is being made from this same small pond. I think it's being made from outside that pond. And I think that brings more people in.
I think you need to have a symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, sure.
I think one of the fears I see with mainstream comics, at least for sure, is the too heavy reliance on everything that's not the comics, all the merch, action figures, t-shirts, and all this other stuff. And it's like, that's great. You can make these $1 billion movie franchise. You do all this stuff. And I get it. You're like, that's a ton of money you never dreamed you were going to make. And now you are. But all of that grew from the seed of the comic book. There would be no Spider-Man franchise without Spider-Man. There'd be no Spider-Man t-shirts, backpacks, lunch pails, you name it, without the comics. So if the seed dies, then everything that births from it may go on for a period of time, but eventually that particular aspect fades from memory, and there's nothing to keep it kind of fueled and grow new branches or whatever.
Shoots off of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the point you're getting at here, though, is that the comic industry as a whole needs to not forget about its core business. And its core business is not the most profitable one.
Right.
All the ancillary ones are far more profitable, but they also come in waves. They are not a permanent fixture. The comic book movie boom is essentially about a 20 years maybe, and for the first 10 of those it was just cutting its teeth, and there's no guarantee that it's not going to turn into the next Western.
Sure. Yeah.
And t-shirts. I mean, we had a bunch of cartoons in the late 80s, early 90s, and then they've essentially vanished.
Right. That's right.
We had them in the 70s with like Super Friends and stuff, and then they basically vanished in the 80s. And then they came back in the early 90s and then vanished in the early 2000s. I mean, of course, there was one or two here or there, but none of them had the kind of cultural touchstone that like the X-Men cartoon did. Does anybody, other than the most hardcore fans, even remember the Iron Man cartoon?
I do.
Well, it's on Disney Plus, so yeah.
But I mean, like, until it was on Disney Plus, these are shows that nobody really. There's a reason why they only got 1 or 2 seasons, and the video games, they could come and go overnight. We don't know, but you need that kind of longevity, and you need that core business to stay vibrant, even if it's not the biggest moneymaker, because if nothing else, it works as an R&D for new characters, new properties, new plots, new ideas, new themes, and even new stories without a budget. You can tone it down later to make it into a movie or a cartoon or whatever. But you and additionally, you can then, if something gets super popular, make an action figure out of it, make a a backpack with it, whatever. But without otherwise you very quickly turn into Hasbro.
Yeah.
And as much as I like Hasbro,
they're irrelevant now.
I mean, for the most part, they kind of are, because they made a bunch of cartoons to essentially sell toys that they had already designed. They had already designed the toys, so they made cartoons because of the advertising laws. But have they even come? I mean, are any of their toys selling anywhere near what they did in the 80s?
Nope.
G.I. Joe, He-Man.
Yeah, no,
they don't.
They haven't evolved. And there's a very active conversation going on in chat, kind of in parallel with this. It's interesting. Should bring Robert and Horizon Brave just onto the show and just have that argument right now. But this is a balance, because like I mentioned earlier this week, you can't sit there and do nothing with your brand. If you do nothing with your brand, I think you do get a bit of that Hasbro effect. Now there's a million nuances to all this. So you do have to evolve it. You have to keep it up to date. You have to figure out how your market's changing. You have to respond to that. And on the other hand, you can also blow up really quickly if you say you get paranoid that I've got to change my brand right now. I've got to appeal to that new audience right now. And then you shift and you didn't do your homework. Kind of goes back to maybe the Daniel Cherry comment. You didn't actually have a plan. And so you shifted and you find there's no audience. And meanwhile, you destroyed your base.
Yeah.
And it feels like we get those two extremes that play out. Either people that kind of just write it into the ground, or they change foolishly without a plan. And I think that represents kind of the crux of a lot of what people are complaining about. This fight in comics today feels like it's really based on this.
Yeah, I wanted to. You had posted up a comment from Larry a few minutes back, and Larry made the comment about they've got 60 years of Spider-Man to mine, and that's totally true. That wasn't what I was trying to say. What I was trying to say more was you're kind of keeping the tree going. Like, I get that they have stuff they can do, but I think Doc answered it best with his analogy of the Western. There was a time where Westerns were all the rage, man. You just go to the movies, Westerns. We loved our Westerns. And now it's like, that's death knell. No studio wants to put a Western on the big screen. It's like
three in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
No, two of them were remakes, 310 to Yuma and True Grit.
Yeah, there's been a handful of Westerns. And usually that's kind of cool, because usually when they do make them, they're kind of special, because you have to really fight hard to get a Western on. But easily society could turn. Like, the next generation of kids grow up and they're like, we're sick of these stupid MCU movies. That's my dad's movies. Screw that crap. We don't want it.
Westerns.
They could be. It totally could. But my point is that you keep the original core of where this things came from. That keeps it. It's like a smoldering kernels. It keeps it alive, even if on the down low, where it can grow again. The reason we had, fantasy movies were big because they made J.R. Tolkien's. Well, that came from the book. But then what they wanted to do? They didn't just start making original IP fantasy movies. They started, what other fantasy books can we get? And so there's going to be a time, I think, when they want to go back and, get a resurgence, try to do things. And if you've kept that culture alive just on a simmer, then, it'll constantly just sort of be there, have surges where it's in the mainstream and then fade back a little bit. But if they just say, you know what, we don't need the comics anymore, then they're going to do what I see what's happening in these video game analogy again, that one of my favorite video game developers, or used to be at least, was Blizzard. They invented, well, they didn't invent, but they came up with their MMO, World of Warcraft, became a multi-billion-dollar franchise, and they're like, why do we need to make video games anymore? We're making more on these monthly revenue subscriptions than we ever made on any sales of any of our previous games.
Sure.
They no longer can afford to develop video games, making like sequels to their basic games, making just a regular Warcraft game. They can't. It makes no money compared to what they've scaled up to.
Right, and when they do remaster those things, they turn out extremely terrible.
Well, yeah, that's a different whole argument. But for my analogy, what I fear is that Disney and Marvel Entertainment start looking at like their product as being like $1 billion movie is the bare minimum. That's what's acceptable. That's all we can do. Well, if we start looking at that and then comics are just like, oh, this comic made $50,000, like that's I fart $50,000, like then that all goes away. And when you start only being able to make that stuff, eventually that's not going to sustain because society moves on. People get new interests, new fads come, there's going to be a new movie craze. I don't know what it'll be. I can't predict, but maybe it'll be manga. Hollywood's going to find something new to tap. Sure. Someone's going to make maybe they'll make the first great video game movie. Yeah, and once that happens, it's like I chalk it up to Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. Once Sam Raimi's Spider-Man happened, it's like the floodgates open. They said, you can make a good comic book movie, and boom, like Hollywood was off to the races. I think that just needs to happen. If someone makes adapts some manga, and it just makes $1 billion, then you're going to see everyone just be like, right turn, we're making these now,
or somebody licenses Brian's Rags universe and makes a movie franchise out of it.
Then we're going to see tons of boob movies.
Yeah,
that'll be like the 80s again.
I will love me some zombie titty movies.
Yeah,
it'll be like the 80s Thrasher. Camp movies again.
The slasher
camp movies, like the summer camp movies. Summer camp movies are like gone now.
Yeah, titty slasher movies.
So real quick, because there's some people here who I think may be confused at this point. So Brian is the creator of Rags, comic book by Antarctic Press, and you can get it now. And you got it's a Kickstarter and Indiegogo, and you just play with everything.
I play with everything. No stone is left unturned.
Yeah. In other words, you're going for business.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because there's some people who don't like our Patreon model, and that's fine. So we're gonna do Kickstarter, we're gonna do Indiegogo to reach that audience and possibly reach an audience that's never heard of us before. You can also find us in your local comic book shop, so that helps out comic book shops in our opinion. And also, if you don't like not a big huge fan of nudity, you pick it up there. So, yeah.
Wait, are you saying that selling comics in comic shops is beneficial to the comic shops?
Yeah, it's for everybody, man.
For
everybody.
It's an interesting concept. Selling
this is another one of those business plans. Is that what we're calling
I'm a weird person.
Helping the comic book shop by selling comics.
It's a weird thing. Yeah.
No, I could get down with that. I like that.
So I've got the question is up and I think has disappeared now. But Daniel Cherry comes in. What's your prediction? I'll put it up. We'll go with the negative first. Who's getting axed first? What do you think?
Slot. No, wait. Bendis.
You were right.
Wait, can he fire Slot too?
I mean,
I know it's a different company, but
he may be powerful.
That would be amazing if he's like, first thing I did was wrote a letter over to Marvel
and made them hire Dan Slott. He just comes in and is like, I am the general manager of comics, not DC Comics.
I'm so good at my job. I just the whole industry listens to me.
Yeah, I'd be okay with this. No, I think it honestly, and I think that this is just, I don't think it's necessarily, assuming he is much more business than his LinkedIn profile appears at first glance. Then I think it is Bendis. He's making too much money, not moving product, and he's kind of a general lightning rod for that company right now.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
So I got an opinion on this. Might be different from everyone else's. I hope that he doesn't fire a single creator, because I think to me that will signal that he's more of like a Didio. I think if he's the general manager / senior VP, which is what Bob Harris was, at least the second position part. He's taken up half of Bob Harris's role, from what I understand. Bob Harris was the editor-in-chief / senior vice president. So if he's in that position, then his job should be to fire people such as, I don't know, say Jim Lee. Not that I'm wanting Jim Lee to get fired. That's not my, just if the person needed to be, he's the guy who makes that call. But when it comes time to fire, like, I don't know, Joe Schmo on a book, your sales suck, whatever. That guy shouldn't be coming down from the mountain and being like, hey, that's too involved granularly like that. That's like what people were talking about when Kevin Feige got his old promotion from, Kevin Feige's going to come. No, dude, he's way up top. Like, like that should be the editor-in-chief's job, or at least the group editor's job. Like if those guys aren't doing that, then you've got an overall, in my opinion, fundamental problem with just how the operations are handled. His job should be able to make sure that my editor-in-chief, if DC goes forward with one, or at least my group editors are competent in making that work.
Yeah.
That's my opinion how that should be.
I agree completely. Actually, I think it would be really nice in comics with the publishers, and I don't know if this hire is going to do it. It's usually it's not one single person, but it'd be wonderful if it acted more like a business where they looked at portfolios, they looked at individuals, they looked at hierarchy, and they actually tried to create wealth for people, and not this kind of weird buddy system that I think has kept comics down, or maybe not down, but it's not allowing it to grow like it needs to. Maybe. Right. But either way. Hey, real quick question here. Why did the executive at Topps go after Rob Liefeld? Are you talking about Adam Levine, the frontman of Maroon 5? Yeah, he posted a really weird... it's not the guy from Maroon 5, but I do have a video coming out about this, I think, tomorrow. It would be so awesome if it was, though, wouldn't it? Like,
it kind of would be.
I'd be like, well, can't we just, like, never mind.
I first saw this feud kind of roll across. I'm like, oh, this is great. The guy from Maroon 5 is going after Rob Liefeld as a dick. And then it's like, oh, no, it's just some guy with cards. It's not even a top executive. That's the funniest part of all this is the guy doesn't even work for Topps. He's kind of licensing some things through Topps. Or anyway, it's a shame.
Well, that's good to know. That was some misinformation then that I was, working off of. I hate that. I hate when misinformation gets spread. So then you start believing it, and you're passing off this misinformation unknowingly. I thought he was a Topps guy, so that's at least better. I was like, Jesus, Topps, what are you doing?
Yeah, well, I did. I saw that in the headline somewhere.
Yeah, you probably thought it was that way because Rob Liefeld responds asking Topps why they're hiring this guy, and then Dennis Berger gets involved, and all these people are like going after Topps. And I'm picturing the social media person at Topps who starts to see this stuff come in, and they're like, "Oh crap, we got an employee who said something crazy on social media. Quick, pull the alerts." And then they realize that the person doesn't work for them, and that's got drinks for everybody.
Yeah. Hey.
That's
damn close call.
Yeah, how awesome must that feel in a company when it's like, oh, we don't have anything to do with this. We can just sit back and go, not us, and off it goes. But
it's like that Metallica song. Ain't my bitch.
It was so for those of you who don't know the story, I mean, this Adam Levine guy, who is not the front man of Maroon 5, but it's funny when you think about it, posts in response to Chadwick Boseman's death, I wish it had been Rob Liefeld instead, basically.
Let's just tackle this. Regardless of if you like Rob Liefeld, hate Rob Liefeld, that's honest to God, just a pretty shitty thing to say, just on a base human level. Like,
yeah.
I said something very similar to that once when I was 12. I think I was 12. It was when the Challenger blew up, and I'm just a little embarrassing about Ash right now. I came into school. I was running late that day, so I was like 10 minutes late to school, and I walked into class, and everyone's crying. And that was the day that Challenger's supposed to go up, and we're going to watch it on TV. Like I didn't know because I was latchkey kid. I walked to school. So the whole time this happened, I'm walking to school, and there was this girl in the class that I didn't get along with, boys and girls just, you spat or whatever. Oh. And she was saying some crap to me. And I just said, I wish you died instead of, her.
Yeah.
And even then at 12 years old, as the words came out of my mouth, I was like,
I regret
that is what the hell did I just say? And I was 12. Like, this is a grown man.
Well,
Just come on, man. And you're doing it on, and you're not even doing it like face to face. Like, no one really, like, I was in the classroom. I didn't go on Twitter. Obviously, it didn't exist, but it amazes me how people do stuff. And I'm like, look, I understand the thought process because I did it as a kid, but grow up a few years, mature.
But it is Twitter. I'm pretty sure that it brings every single user to the emotional age of a, I don't know, toddler.
10, 5.
Yeah, somewhere between 4 and 11.
Well, that's why
that's
why GIFs are so popular, because a lot of these, I think that you spend enough time there and you struggle with writing. So if you could just pick the picture out of a list, it's even easier. So it really is getting people down to that kind of 5, 4. I mean, I remember my daughter was like 4 and she liked these apps that just had pictures on them, and she, well, maybe a little younger than that, I don't know. Or my kid's dumb. No, I don't want to say that. She'll listen to this later. It is the word. This whole controversy has been a crazy, example of social media.
It is. I don't know. I get the regression and makes people say things that maybe wouldn't. It's in the whole anonymity factor. It's easier to not behave like you would when someone can punch you. But still, like, I would never say that to someone. I mean, obviously you say Ash, but you did. And I was like, yeah, but I was a little kid. I grew up. Like, I even on Twitter, I would never think to be like, and there's some bad people on Twitter that I'm just like, oh my gosh, like catapult you to the sun, but peace.
Well, what was curious about is the pile-on, because it's like we talked about earlier, a bunch of people immediately went after Topps. And then George Deep, who was doing some work, kind of said, I'm quitting, I'm leaving. And that's his choice. I mean, you can walk away from business and money all you want, I guess. But then Dennis Barger comes in and basically demands for Topps to fire him. Again, Topps has nothing to do with any of this. They're just like, oh, okay. And then he goes on that if you don't fire this guy and you work with this person again, you're going to get the dentist treatment. And I'm like, I don't even know what. I mean, that's horrifying. I don't know what that means.
Oh, it means you get treated like Grand Comics.
Fair enough.
No, it just means he's going to, I don't know, fat at you.
Oh God, I've been in many a room with Dennis, and I mean, I took it to mean the guy was just kind of in a slightly loud voice, just drone on for about 15 minutes about stuff nobody cares about, while they wish that we could somehow escape and go drink.
Yeah. That's what I mean. But he's just gonna fat at him. Yeah.
Anyway, it's a crazy thing that it went all this way, but I mean, you do feel. I mean, yikes! Oh, these are the dumbest possible controversies. All right, so. We think that, Brian, you're going Bendis, though. You think Bendis' time is short at DC? Like half the people in the chat, at least, are probably just begging for that to happen.
Yeah, I'm hoping for it. But realistically, honestly, I really hope what the guy does is something more of what we were hoping that Japanese guy over at Marvel was going to do. And just take, Hero, like where he just, just takes the reins and says, all right, this is where we're gonna direct our universe. You guys over here, you handle Superman. Give me what your plan for the next 10 years is. Write those stories out, get them done. You guys over at Green Lantern, you do the exact same thing, so on and so forth. That's what I hope he does. But personally, I just hope he kind of just gets rid of Bendis.
Akira Yoshida's back in the news again. I mean, the people are taking an Alice Cott was taking another run at him today. Like that's never going to be over.
Alice Cott needs to keep himself relevant from being, dollar bin.
But does going after Yoshida do that? Like how is that making anybody relevant? Like who cares at this point?
Crabs in a bucket.
I was literally about to say the exact same thing.
That's exactly what it is.
Crabs in a fucking bucket. This whole industry is so goddamn stupid.
But it's weird because there's all these moments where you can clearly see like a path to revenue. You can see like, and with this Keanu thing that went on this week, like, hey, look, there's oh my goodness, look at all the money that's being made. Hey, all the money being made, and it's not Ethan Van Sciver. So good news for all the people who do not like him. Look, there's money being made, right? This should be a celebration for everyone.
But that path includes getting rid of them.
Yeah,
That's
I
the problem.
agree.
Well, and also you can see that, Perch, because you've been in the professional world, you've run your own business, you
I do
have an understanding of a portion of the world
You're also
that
not a communist.
these people do not. They literally do not understand how the world works.
It's very I mean, you know, in many cases I've talked to people, I've talked to creators in person, I've talked to people online, and like the first three steps, it's pretty good. It's like, hey, we need to build up a reputation. It's like, yes, you do. We need to push for higher page rates, you know, and yes, we do. We need to get more fans of comics. Yes, we do. So that's why we're going to rally to get Jeff Johns fired. It's like, wait, what?
Sounds like a plan.
What that step 4 has nothing to do with your cash.
Yes, all of these things, they have like a lot of valid things, like project points, but they feel like the fucking underpants gnomes.
Yeah,
where it's just, you know, steal socks, keep socks, question mark, profit.
Yeah.
And they keep just trying to, whatever the thing that they want to do is what they just automatically shoehorn into where that question mark goes.
It feels like it's not quite the underpants gnomes, because it feels like the step 1 is the steel underpants, step 2 mystery, step 3, and that's how we'll screw Jeff Johns.
Okay, well that could be too.
They don't even get the step 3 profit there. It's all because I mean it's and I don't remember now if it was Brett Booth or Sean Gordon Murphy in the interview I did. I think they said something smart, and I've heard it from, by the way, many people, many different ideologies, right, left, everything else. It's one of the puzzling things is there's almost a shame about success. That if you're in the comic industry and you're successful, you have to hide it because you're bad.
And you have to apologize for it.
Wait, hold on. I want to touch on this one because this, as a new creator, weirded me the heck out. It's the comic book industry is the only industry where you are looked down upon for making a profit off of your own product. And it's the dumbest fucking thing I've ever experienced. It's like it's kind of like dealing with a drug dealer that's actively sniffing his own stash instead of selling it, you know? And it's the weirdest, dumbest, stupidest thing.
They're the ones.
You guys don't remember? I got in some weird trouble with the speculator market because I was telling people, hey, don't spend $300. Just throw me $20. I'll get you my stuff. And one of the criticism was, this guy just wants to make a profit off of his own shit. Well, duh. Why wouldn't I want to make profit?
Oh no,
I want to make profit off of my own stuff. Why wouldn't I want to keep Luigi actively engaged, working on my stuff, and paying him full time?
Sure.
You know, like, why wouldn't I want to do that?
Yeah, you and I had this conversation a couple of times, and that was never one of the plot points that I brought up. I just said the speculator market and the collector market kind of go hand in hand with raising the profile of your product for current issues.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a hard lesson I learned. And we're doing better about navigating those waters, but it was just still kind of weird to me. It's like, how dare you try to make money off of your own product? Like, well,
oh no,
why wouldn't I?
If you have, that's why I was suggesting, I'm like, just change the color, change something on it, and sell the exact same thing.
You know, I feel dumb about it, but yeah, we have been doing that lately. If you haven't, yeah, yeah. I mean, it feels dumb to me. Like, in this day and age, there shouldn't be a thing such as first print, second print. Like, it's really stupid in my mind. But you know, if it makes people happy and less aggressive, like, whatever. It's not that big of a deal. But
wait a second, are you saying that we should go away from collectability?
I'm not saying we should go away from collectability, but I am saying, what's the point of a first print, second print, third print, ninth print when, with the way digital printing is these days, it's mostly just a PDF formatted a certain way, and
what's the point of like 17 variants?
Right? Like,
Well,
like,
my answer about the first part of the question, the printing is specifically for the collectors. If you didn't have a delineation, of like what printing, if you just said, oh, we're just going to print on demand, you might have a comic that goes into 9 printings because it becomes so popular. But those popular comics like that tend to make those issues sought after for the collector to get the first print, because that was the one that's the original. I mean, if you even go back to like book collecting at old books, no one wants the 13th version of the book. They want the original first print, of this or that.
Readers do.
Yeah, so like
readers don't care. Readers are like, just give me whatever. It's fine. And,
yeah,
and that's why you have the printing.
I'm more of a reader myself, so that's kind of where my standpoint is. And again, like I said, we're doing better about navigating some something that we're not a part of the industry we don't really actively understand, and we're doing better about it. But to us, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Like, here's the book. All right, cool. You got the book. Be happy. Everybody should be happy that person A got the book and was able to read it and enjoy it.
I think after the second print, there might be an argument of like, does it really matter? Because I've never seen anyone go, oh, that third, fourth print was good, but fifth print, nah. Like, collectors just like, I want the first print or nothing. Generally, unless there's something special. Sometimes there's like a variant. I hate when they do variants on second printings, but sometimes there's like a special second print that that's an anomaly.
Captain Marvel number 14 second print, or number 17 second print, that has Kamala Khan on the cover for the first time.
Yeah. Anomalies like that exist, but my point is, like, I personally, I'm a big advocate for this, because I came into comics as a collector. I've stayed in comics. The reason I buy physical comics is because of their actual inherent value. I'm not a speculator. I don't go out and buy big back issues. I don't go spend tons of money, but I love the thrill. I love the idea that I backed a book. Let's say, like, I was there day one when Rags came out and I got that book. And if that book skyrockets in value, that thrill of like, I got that copy. Yeah. Like, that's an added value to not just monetary value, but an added value of, my entertainment and everything towards the book. And I think if you're not a collector, it doesn't interfere with you, because you can get those second, third, fourth prints, and you get, or the trade paperback, or go get it digitally, or whatever other options are available. You can still get it and read, but if you get rid of the collector part, you're alienating. If you're not alienating, you're at least you're diminishing certain audience. Because I might, if comics had no inherent value, if there was no like potential way to sell them back, if they were like magazines or any of the other, like if they were just newspaper, anything that's not collectible, because I guess most things I'm struggling, because I'm like, actually some of these are collectible, but you get my point. If they were just junk, then
nobody would want them, nobody would buy them. Like, I totally get that. And
I'm like, why don't I just go
understand.
digital? Because I read everything on my iPad these days anyway. But the reason I don't is because that digital copy I paid $3.99 for literally has zero resale value. But my comic collection, I can at least get a couple dollars back from it. Like, if there's something in it, someone wants it.
I hear what you're saying. So I'm just saying, like, as a creator, I'm not building a book to say like, oh man, I really hope someday, 10 years from now, somebody in the future will be able to put their kid through college once they sell this book. That's not my thought when I make these things. The only thing I think of is like, man, I really hope people enjoy this and they laugh at X, Y, and Z. And let's give them something fun to look at, fun to have. And when they look back at like, hey, I remember when I backed the stupid zombie titty book and I thought it was a Walking Dead thing, a Walking Dead knockoff, right? Like, as long as people can look back and find enjoyment, however that enjoyment is, I don't care, when it comes to variants, I want to put out like meaningful variants. Like, I don't want to do like another silly like Spider-Man 300 because everyone and their godmother has done that. I want to put out a variant where somebody can look at it like, oh man, I remember 5 years ago they did this variant and that paid off actually in the book 6 months later. That was dope. I can't believe they actually took the time to put some thought into their variants rather than just rip off Todd McFarlane for the 18th billionth time.
Right.
So
No,
like,
and
like
more
I said,
power.
like I said, you know, I do understand the collector thought process now. I do understand the speculation thought process now, like of first appearance of a character doing X and blah blah blah. Like I get it, but me personally, when I make books, those are the farthest things from my mind. I just want people to enjoy it.
No,
And if I can get somebody to enjoy my book, I'm happy. And one of the things that really, I guess, hurts my feelings is when somebody says, "Hey, man, I want to read your stuff, but I don't want to pay $80 for it." That's kind of like ridiculous, and I absolutely agree. Like, yeah, you shouldn't pay $80 to read my shit. Here you go. Or throw me $20. It covers the printing and shipping, and you know,
and I
a
salute
little
you.
bit of profit. And,
That's
like just trying to find that balance is
and
really,
as the creator and the publisher, that should be. I think one of the problems with the whole collecting part of the industry as a whole, in my opinion, as a collector, is the manufactured collectability that we're seeing publishers do. You know, like, ooh, here's these special incentive variants and this and that, and we're doing all this, like, and they're trying to make things. We're going to put this special character's first appearance on a variant, and you're just like, oh, just shut up, just make the book. All I'm saying is let the books have a potential to have their you know, to be identified as like their first printing. So maybe the book never becomes worth anything. I've got tons of old independent books that I bought in the 80s that are worth nothing, right? But I also have, you know,
trouble.
But if I had a first printing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #1, I would be super happy. You know, like
Sure.
the best I ever got was the second printing of issue 2, which I treasure. You know, but they didn't try to gimmick it. They were just trying to make books, and that was great. And the books became valuable on their own merit because they were good books that people wanted.
exactly, and that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, that's what you should do. I 100% support it.
Yeah, finding that balance is always it's a little tricky. You can go the Marvel route and do 37 different variants for a book that no one really gives a shit about, like the Eternals, and have absurd ratio variants and threshold variants and this and that. Or you can make one cover with a very small print run, and then everybody buys it up, but you don't make enough money to actually go back to print.
Hey, question for the group. What do you think about this? I think this is a good idea. A comic book vending machines. Good idea, bad idea. What do you guys think?
That's a good idea. I mean, might as well.
I like it in theory, except for the fact that it's not even remotely practical.
So I think the idea was like you go up to like a vending machine type of apparatus, and then I said apparatus, look at me. You go to like a vending machine type thing, and you go scroll through the browser, like, oh look, there's Spider-Man 800, and you type in Spider-Man 800 buy, and it will print. It'll freshly print, staple, package, and put together a Spider-Man 800 just for you out of that machine. That's the theory on how it's supposed to work.
That's the one that I've always been moderately okay with. But the concept of a vending machine, like I go to buy my fucking Doritos, no, not gonna work. First of all, way too much footprint, way too large of a footprint, uses power, incredibly low margins, a lot of maintenance required. You can only put in a small number of books. You're going to have a lot of damage. And
you said low margins. Have you bought a candy bar at a vending machine lately?
Yeah,
I was like, what the? Those seem like some high margins to me.
No, I mean,
sorry, I was interrupting.
No, but they also do volume.
Yeah, volume is the trick. But what if you had a comic shop? Okay, so now making it low tech. What if you had a comic shop who's got one location in a city? They buy 4 vending machines. They put the vending machines at a movie theater or a grocery store or some way, and they basically buy the space or get the space to work their way back into the newsstand. Is that and every week they go out there and they have comics in bags, and I don't know, they're in some kind of clothes hanger that falls off. That part of the idea is probably crazy, but Is that viable at all? Do you think that would make money?
I don't know if they'd make. I don't know if it'd make money, but I am definitely down for the idea. Obviously, the corkscrew vending machine, I think that Doc was describing, has all sorts of nightmares of seeing your comic book get destroyed as it falls down. And but a comic book is a flat thing, so it could be dispensed out of like a sliding, like a dollar bill, like just comes slides out. I think you could design a machine to dispense comics in a very nice fashion, and that would be great if you could just do that. I also never thought about Brian's idea, but it makes sense about the printing. And as he was describing it, I was like, no, I wouldn't be down for that because it goes against exactly what I was just talking about, the collectability. There is no first print. It's like it's forever in print. And so therefore, whatever comic you want, I got a copy of it. So there's no scarcity, but
not necessarily. I mean,
hold on,
that comic might be in print until like, all right, this comic's in print only at this machine for the next 10 or 15 days. You can actually,
once you do that, counterfeiting becomes the issue. But my point, though, up to yours, that I'm supporting it, as I thought about it, let it bounce around my head, is like, I wouldn't actually care if they could use that process and this whole concept to bring comics down. If they say, hey, look, we're printing it on demand, this machine does it automatically, we don't have to have an employee. The only thing is just keeping the machine stocked with materials. If that machine could print out the comic for like $1.50, $2, I would be willing. I don't care about the collectability, because now you've got that price as now like candy bar price. Like I just disposable. But when I'm paying $4, $5, $6 for an issue, I either expect greatness or I expect hold on to some value.
Yeah. I mean,
I feel like if you're paying $5 or $6 from an issue, Alex Ross should be drawing not only the cover but the interior and signing every single
every book needs to be like Dark Knight Returns. I have no problems paying $6 for an issue of Dark Knight Returns, but if it's Dan Slott Iron Man and I just paid $5 for it.
Now they do this in Japan, so Ron is correct here. I mean, they have all kinds of things in vending machines in Japan. So
sure,
I mean, you can get a lot there, but it is a different market, and I mean, Japan has moved to the digital world pretty aggressively.
But also in Japan, if he's talking about manga and stuff, manga's not, its business model is not based on a collectability thing. It's based on like Pulp Fiction, right? It's based in print. Well, and like Pulp Fiction, right? Like it's old school, just cheap pulp novels were designed to be, you could buy them and they didn't cost you much and you could burn through them, and no one cared if your Louis L'Amour book, went up in value. You bought it, you read it, threw it away. I think in Japan, a lot of manga is that way too. Like it's not, but the difference is you're paying $5 and you're getting, a couple 150 pages and you're something meaty, and you're buying it purely for the entertainment. Whereas in America, they're saying, well, we've got this industry and we've established this value and we're charging $5 for 20 pages. And it's like, and it's not even good sometimes.
Sometimes.
I mean, I think that I think that overall, vending machines, at least as a standard vending machine, like where it actually has a product in there, you look over, you figure out which one you want, you press A6 and it brings out a comic for you. I don't think that's practical. You'd have to essentially either buy something that Japan already sells that isn't used in the States currently, or design a device like an actual cabinet from the ground up. And at that point, just put in a fucking spinner rack. It's the same thing.
But spinner rack requires you to have an employee and you have to have a service. I think what Perch is talking about is like Redbox. Like you can just
like Redbox.
You can just be like, hey, 7-Eleven, do you mind if I put a Redbox out front? How much do you want to charge me to like have my Redbox out in front of your store? And I think actually it could be viable if you could get these things in really high traffic areas, because you would do enough volume, because comics just don't sell that much to off the street crowd. But I believe that there's enough kids out there, if you're at a shopping mall or something, and the kids are antsy and bored and their phone's dead or something, and they look and they go Spider-Man or whatever the craze is of the day. They just saw an MCU movie and there's a comic book and it's like, can I get this? And mom's, it's like, just shut you up here. It's $4 in the machine. Here you go.
What do you think about this? And I think this is the interesting point here is if maybe it's less about saleability than about visibility. So is it effective market? If you're in Walmart and I mean,
sorry.
Okay. No, but the problem with Walmart, and this was the big fight. This is what got the sandwich thrown at me once upon a time, but it is having comics there. I think is a good thing because again, it's like the Keanu Reeves Kickstarter. It's put comics more places, get a new audience. That's probably step one to anything. You should be doing that long before you decide to change all of your characters over to appeal to a new audience before you know if it exists. Get the comics into their hands first.
Okay, Mitch.
Sorry.
That's why I was laughing.
Does the vending machine help with visibility?
I think the vending machine would actually help visibility because if like, all right, you walk down to 7-Eleven and like, oh, hey, there's this vending machines and what's this ginger and holding this rifle and tits? Oh, that's weird. And then you go to like the skate park and then, hey, I've seen this titty ginger zombie book around. What the fuck is this? And eventually you see something enough times, you get enough interest. Like, all right, what the hell is this? I'm gonna read it, and then you grab it, and then you get hooked.
Well, the other problem is, what is your price point on the individual books inside? Because if it's current cover price, all the visibility in the world won't help because you might as well put them in fucking poly bags again.
Right.
Non-readers. The idea behind this for visibility is for non-readers, right?
Right.
They can't read them. And they're not going to pay $4 for something they can't even flip through.
Right.
You're right. There are going to be a lot of people. I agree with you. There's going to be a lot of people that won't. However, look, you already see this like at airports and stuff. I've seen like magazine vending machines because people, you don't see it quite as much these days because of all the electronic devices. But for a while you were seeing them. And people didn't need to flip through the magazine to see what was in it. They just, that's probably going to give me something for the flight. My point was about the traffic was that if you could get it in high enough areas, even though your sales volume per eyeball would be very low, you would still get enough because you'd have enough foot traffic going by that even that small percentage that actually stopped by to buy one might be enough.
But for the $5,000 or $10,000 you're going to pay to put in that vending machine, you can pay $100 and stick in a spinner rack, and then you don't lose those people.
No, but the problem is you need a physical person in a cash register to do that. The vending machine's all automated. It just sits there.
Yeah, and at 2 a.m. when they want to rent a Redbox movie, that's fine, but nobody's buying comic books at 3 a.m. drunk.
No, but you
have you been to California?
Well,
but Doc, you're not considering the concept. Who's going to operate the spinner rack?
You just put it in a 7-Eleven, dude.
Okay, that's the point. 7-Eleven doesn't want to operate. They don't want to donate a single square foot to selling comics because they can sell other things instead. Whereas the vending machine can sit on a curb. It can sit in the middle of the traffic area of the mall. It's not in any store. No one has to accept ownership of it. And someone can just walk by and go, huh. Whereas you're going to go to the mall and go to every single store. You guys want a spinner rack? No, fuck no. I mean, if you can convince Hot Topic to put a spinner rack in there and sell it, but I'll bet you they won't.
It becomes a chicken and the egg problem. I think that these comics, I do believe, now forgetting a lot of things, I think comics can sell as an item, particularly depending on how you market it. If you're marketing it as nostalgic, or you're marketing for whatever the audience is for that shop or whatever. Part of the problem, I think, is that the newsstand, as it exists today, it can't consume 100 comics a month. But if you're Hot Topic, it could consume 12 comics a month that fit maybe the audience going into Hot Topic, which make your own joke here. But I think that that's probably how it needs to evolve. But I think Ash is also correct. You've got to make a compelling audience argument that you're taking real estate in that location and it's going to bring you dollars. And I think today or to date, the publishers have not either wanted to make that argument or been able to make that argument.
Well, you thinking about Redbox, there's no physical location that you can go rent DVDs, and it's shrinking by the day of places you can go buy DVDs and Blu-rays. But Redboxes are still strong because of that. It's that factor of automation that it can just sit there, and one dude can visit it every couple of days, and that changes the entire ballgame. That's the only reason in my mind, that I even accept the vending machine idea is because of that. Now, if you can find a storefront that would be willing to sell comics, I'd argue we kind of already got that. They're called comic book stores.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, but I get that point. Now I could see the only places that I could see the vending machine concept being successful would literally be inside movie theaters. It's the only place.
I think, yeah, and depending on what that's going to look like in a post-COVID world as well is a whole other story.
Assuming there are theaters, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you could have the vending machine and it has the comic and it's bagged with a mask, and then.
Oh, actually, that's not a bad idea. Like you get like a neck gaiter,
yeah,
that is imprinted with like some of the characters on. Like I would actually buy like a Spider-Man half-masked neck gaiter if it came with like a Spider-Man comic for free. You know what I mean?
You hit the nail on the head. You're talking about right now is a major lost opportunity, I think. You talk about the polybag thing. Most of the time, I'm like, you get a polybag. Oh, look, they put a trading card in there. Who gives a crap? But if you made a polybagged version of my favorite comic and you got a special mask, like say Hawkman's one of my favorite comics, right? Oh, we're going to have this final issue of Hawkman. It's going to be polybagged, blah, blah, blah. And we're going to include, I'm buying it. I want that mask. Charge me. Like, this is something that everyone needs, right?
Yeah.
And you got tons of people that are Spider-Man fans, Captain America fans, Wolverine fans, Batman fans that will come in and buy a comic book, not because they're comic fans, but they're merch fans, right? Because you got all these normies that are like, oh, Batman's badass. You ever read the comics? No. But Batman's cool. I watched the movies. All right. That mask. Where'd you get that mask? Oh, yeah, dude. Latest issue of the comic comes with a mask. Really? Oh, dude. And that gets them to come into a comic book store and they buy that book and they get the mask. And maybe they come back.
Yeah, speaking of masks, did you guys see this? Which is breaking news.
Breaking.
Yeah.
Breaking.
WB CEO says he has figured out a way to eat popcorn in a movie theater without taking your mask off.
That is genius.
Yeah, this is like the saved you a click type material, but I mean, what do you got to do with this? I don't even know what to say.
The question that I need to know though is how do I get a blowjob in an empty theater without her taking the mask off?
That's a very different question.
It's
I'm not sure that's appropriate for the stream.
Doc just took this into PG. Is it PG-13 realm anymore? I don't know.
Would you brag that the way this is listed, she has figured out a way to eat popcorn? Like
I thought that was Gal Gadot.
I think this is.
I mean, that is Gal Gadot, but
they don't want to put the CEO there. I mean, she doesn't have a mask on, so the picture does not, fit the story. I'm sorry for distracting, but what the hell?
I don't know. All I can think of is you reminded me of this contraption that I saw. I want to say it was probably in April or May. It was pretty early on in the whole COVID fiasco. And these guys were making this mask that had this like little thing, like cord attached to it with a little button. And you push the button down and it made this little spring contraption where the mask literally it was cut in the middle and it would have like two little metal bars. I'm trying to describe it in a way you can picture it. And it would like open up like, so your mouth would be exposed by pushing the button, and then you let go of the button and the thing would close. And it just used that little, you've seen these spring loaded push. I don't know. And I was like, are you kidding? Back at that time, we were still operating under the idea that we need to lock down for 2 weeks to flatten the curve. And I was like, wait a second. You're inventing this thing that's got to go into R&D, into production, and then you got to hit the market. Usually any product you're making, it's going to 3 months of development. I mean, look how long it's taken to finally start seeing stores sell these designer masks. And now I go into 7-Eleven, I see, I picked up a Superman mask last month, and I was like, that's cool. It's a mask with Superman. Like, it's got the Superman logo on it. Like, but it took how many months just to get a printed mask? Like, and I was at the time, I was like, how long do you think this is going to go on? Like, and then now fast forward to today.
What about one of those like?
Jokes on you.
What about one of those like football helmets with the beer cans on the top and the straw that comes down to your mouth, and one's a beer and the other's a popcorn chute?
We're in vintage. That's right. Yeah. It's hey, here a serious question for everybody. I mean, why not? Who's on Batgirl or Huntress? Why not? What do you say?
Okay, so which Batgirl? Because Cassandra Cain was sexy as fuck.
You immediately went to the complexity in the question.
Wait a second. I thought you liked gingers.
I mean, I do, but come on.
The truth is out. We've exposed them.
No, hold on. Hear me out. Hear me out on this one, right?
My leather fetish.
A Batgirl in all black, mouth is sewed up, doesn't have to say anything to you. It's just like this really creepy looking thing, like a Wednesday Addams in spandex. Come on.
Yeah.
All right.
Come on.
There's definitely a much more high level fetishy thing with Cassandra Cain. Personally, I go with Huntress. She's just kind of slutty, and I go with.
Wait, don't get me wrong. I love Babs, but Cassandra's just got this whole. It's just all this whole another level. Like she just sit in the corner and stare at you, and you're just like, my.
Open up a weird door. Yeah,
it's the gimp mask.
I am too purist. I'm too much of a prude. I go for the innocent, sweet and innocent. So I'm going to take Babs.
So you're definitely more of a Marianne than a okay.
No. I'm actually Ginger is more. No, Marianne. You're right. No, I mixed the two. You're right. Yeah. You're right. I was mixing the two.
Gilligan's Island, man.
God, it's been a long time. I haven't watched Gilligan's Island in 20 years.
I always had, this is a really weird reason, what I'm about to say, throw out here, but Batgirl.
Am I going to hate you after you say this?
You're not. No.
Are you sure?
You're a Mrs. Howe fan, aren't you?
No. There's just a tiny bit of logic. This is going to sound really pathetic, I promise. But Batgirl at times has been written younger. And so I would say for this answer, I have this knee-jerk reaction to go Huntress, because definitely you don't run into any troubles there. But I know that's flimsy, goofy logic. So the chat can make fun of me.
Well, I was assuming we were talking about adult Batgirl.
Well, I would assume too, but the question.
So anyone in the chat making assumptions?
So I'm assuming Batgirl.
Yeah.
Here's somebody who thank you very much for finding the channel. I'm glad that you guys listened to. It's always great when people say they're listening to this on the road while I am also on the road. So then you don't notice the bad audio. So that's perfect. It just works out for everybody. How about this artistic slump? Is there an artistic slump in have any of you noticed a slump in our artistic talent lately? I think I know the answer to this, but what do you say?
Yes.
Yes. Why do you think?
Well, because like honestly, a lot of comics lately, I can't fucking tell the difference between the artists as of late. I really can't. And one of the things that we got a lot of high praise for is, you look at Luigi's inks, and you're not going to find inks like that over at Marvel. You're not going to find inks like that over at DC. Like, this is a book that has a really unique look to it. And even looking at a lot of pros and, the way they draw and whatnot, it's like there comes a point where I honestly can't tell Liefeld from Jim Lee.
Mm-hmm.
Wow,
and that's because and it's not, I'm not saying like I can't tell the difference, but there just comes a point where everything just starts looking the same. Like, you can look back at 90s comics, right? I honestly couldn't tell you the difference between Image and Wildstorm at the time. Or God, what was the Ultraverse? Yeah, like I couldn't tell you the difference between Image, Wildstorm, Ultraverse. They all look the same to me past a certain point, and this kind of happens with just comics across the board overall.
Well, there were a lot of people copying Jim Lee back in those days, so you had a lot of
and there were a lot of people copying Liefeld's style and whatnot. So
And then of course when they went to Image and they didn't want to draw anymore, they started hiring people to mimic them. Like what's his nuts? I'm drawing a blank. Death metal artist.
Capullo.
I don't know why I drew a blank on his name. Capullo started off as a McFarlane clone. Like, right? He was able to draw Spawn, and people could not would literally go, I couldn't tell McFarlane was off the book.
He had already been on X-Force though.
Yes, but he made a name for himself on Spawn. Like,
okay,
right? Jim Lee was on Punisher first, but everyone knows him from X-Men.
It was that time period. You did seemed like you had camp. I mean, you had Rob Liefeld and a bunch of people who drew like Rob Liefeld, and you had some Jim Lee people, and you had some Todd McFarlane people. Poor Eric Larson, but Eric Larson
wants to be Eric Larson.
Well, a lot of people back when I sold comics in that time period, people thought Eric Larson was Todd McFarlane kind of drunk. I mean, it was a crappy Todd McFarlane. And if you look at his early Spider-Man, he was the one who was kind of adapting Todd the most.
I think a lot of people, not pointing any fingers at anyone here, but I think there's a lot of people too that just don't really know art very well, so they just see it and it looks the same. Okay, well, to an untrained eye, maybe it does. But I can spot. I mean, except for some of the tight clones, I have a difficult time. But like, you put Silvestri up to Jim Lee, up to Rob Liefeld, up to Todd McFarlane, up to even Adam Kubert, to anyone, I can boom. I know who that is. I know who that is. I don't know. I'm not trying to.
I just always have I can tell the Kuberts apart. I just can never remember which one's which.
Well, right, Andy and Adam
and which one's Andy.
Yeah,
just because I always forget.
Well, that's better than me. Those two I sometimes have a difficulty. I'm like, is that Andy or is that Adam? They look really similar.
No, I can always.
Okay, good on you. See, you got an eye.
Yeah.
How about Captain America? Paul brings this up, and this was one of the ones where you started out in this current run with Lintel Francis Yu, I believe, and then you had some Kubert in there, and then there was just a bizarre drop to just some unknown artist that was found somewhere, and it was. I mean, there was some really terrible art.
Because Ta-Nehisi Coates can't sell anything.
Well, I think part of the problem is
with a bad artist. Right?
I think part of the problem is kind of what Brian said. Like, inking is just gone in the toilet. Well, it's gone. I mean, but because it's gone, it's also gone in the toilet because there's no reason for people to really master that skill, and also they don't have as much opportunity to master the skill because it's not desired. And so what's happening? Because wages are going down. Artists are having to ink their own stuff so they can get the pencil and the ink rates just to pay the bills, but not every great penciler knows how to ink, and it's like, so I think that's actually part of the problem with seeing the slump in art as well, because some of these guys, I look at their pencils and I'm like, oh God, that's amazing. And then I go, why doesn't it look this good on the page? It's like, oh, your own stuff. You're kind of doing yourself a disservice. I wish I could see your pencils.
I mean, the lost art of the inker, Terry Austin and some of the people back in the day. I mean, there was some great work that is. I mean, that is a lost. That is one of the lost in comics.
I think the last legitimately amazing inker was Matt Banning.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, by the way, I think Chase wants to come in.
Oh, crap! Hello, Chase.
Hi, Chase.
Hey, Chase.
How's it going, guys?
It's
great to see y'all.
Yeah, great to see you too. We're just having you've missed. Well, we got to catch you up. So, Batgirl or Huntress?
Oh,
the answer is
Batgirl.
lesbians. Lesbians. No, the answer is lesbians.
All of the above.
Yeah, that's my
Leeway.
Comics in a machine. Good idea, bad idea.
Say that one more time.
Comic books in a vending machine. Good or bad idea?
Oh, that's freaking fantastic.
Okay.
Holy cow. I love it. No, that's incredible. We're going to have to bag and board them before we put them in there, though.
Well, sure. I can't the Doritos. Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to cope with that hitting the bottom like that. I just cringe so hard.
Yeah. How about what do you think Daniel Cherry? What do you think his first move is going to be?
Who?
Oh gosh. Fire more people. Fire more people. I really think that's fire. I mean, not necessarily fire more people, but launch another Batman. I mean, we've already got that.
That's
I don't.
that's the
I
safe
honestly have
answer.
no idea. It's back and forth. I honestly be good for business in the sense that he's probably going to drive sales up.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's true. I think we want more Batman titles.
On the subject of inkers,
Yeah.
Ben David actually made a very good point in the chat that colorists are kind of running the ship now. And I think he might actually be onto something where the colorists are kind of filling in for inkers, except for the fact that they're terrible at inking.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think much heavier reliance on the colorists right now, especially at the big two. But which company do you think does a better job today?
Which company? Meaning the big two?
Yeah,
or all above? Like, are you
DC?
Yeah.
DC by far,
without question.
DC by far is killing it. Yeah, without question. That's sad to me because I'm a Marvel fan. Big time.
Me too.
So
Me too.
I don't like that at all. It bugs me.
Speaking sorry. Go ahead.
In a just world, we'd have all of Marvel's IP shift over to DC and DC's IP shift over to Marvel, and just
yeah. Thank you. You know what? So I have such a hard time saying this right now because I kind of listened to Perch's video earlier about he was talking about Marvel was dying back in 1992 or whatever. That article, that's people were writing all these. It kind of felt like hit pieces against Marvel in a sense, right? But it's so funny to see history kind of repeating in that sense. And it's almost the same thing that was happening. It's almost like as the decades turn, we see upturns in talent, we see upturns in business, and then we see downturns. And I think we're right back right now, honestly. And then, hopefully next decade is just going to be amazing. I don't know. That's how I feel about Marvel. We're in a downturn. Huge.
The correct answer is whatever company Mark Waid is not working for is the one that's actually doing better. Because that has been I'm not even joking about that either. If you look historically, whatever company he is working at is the one that's going in the shitter. It's been like that since the late 80s.
I think in terms of art, I mean, you have different business priorities. I think DC I think DC is prioritizing more the art. I mean, they're for the art at the moment. And I think that it's a nature of their strategy. I think Marvel has got a different strategy right now. You have some very top level artists on their top books, but they've got a whole game set up where you launch a title, you put a big artist on it. 3 issues later, you swap them out for somebody cheaper, you move that big artist on to something else, and it's a kind of a shuffle game. They're playing the game very, very differently. Do you think that this question for Robert? Do you think that Marvel is going to get tired of events that events are driving a lot of their numbers?
I just hope they do them smarter instead of kind of what they're doing. It doesn't seem to be working. And Dawn of X has lost so many people. I've talked to a lot of retailers, you included, and everybody has seen their sales drop. I mean, exponentially for Dawn of X from Hoxpox.
Yes, they're really hoping that
I don't have a good answer for how it can be done better.
Easy. You do one every 30 years. That's the answer.
Yes, but when it comes to fixing X-Men, it's very simple. You tell Jonathan Hickman to stop using your X franchise as his R&D department for his fucking Decorum book. Because that's all it is.
That's interesting.
I'm
really enjoying Decorum.
What you do is you go and do like every comic when it was the best. You have one title, right?
Yeah.
When X-Men was
one title.
When X-Men was the best, they didn't have 14 different books to buy. They didn't have like think about this. Like X-Men was selling 750,000 copies on a slow month when nothing was happening, no events, nothing, no advertising, no MCU to base excite, no Fox X-Men movies, no X-Men cartoons, no toys, nothing to promote X-Men. No one outside of comics knew who X-Men was, and it was destroying the sales charts. And Marvel's like, that's cool. And eventually like, oh, we're breaking 1 million. Maybe we should launch a second X-Men title. Like Today it's just like, X-Men's failing, reboot it. It's still failing, reboot it again, but like 12 titles. Like, dude, you're not even giving a chance for a title to breathe. You're bombarding people with crap. And even if one or two of those books are good, people like me are never going to see it because I'm so pissed off and fed up, and you've taken so much of my money and you've been so exploitive that I'm just like, F it. I don't care. I don't care that I read Wolverine and issue number 1 was okay. You charged me $8 for it, and the rest of your stuff blows, and forget it. Make one solid, awesome book. And then when you can do that for a year or two solid, maybe talk about releasing a second book. But modern big two, both DC always follows Marvel's lead. This is what pisses me off, because if Marvel could fix things, then DC would fix. They just are like a little puppy. It's like, oh, where are you going? I'm gonna follow you. But if Marvel could fix this and just it would, I think it would change things. But they got in this thing, and Bob Harris is probably the good reason he got fired, because he's the guy who started this over at Marvel, of just like going for all of that short-term gain. Let's milk the cow until it dies. And then you're like, now what? How are we going to sell milk? We're a dairy farm. I don't know, but we sure sold the record-breaking last month. You know?
It's I'm gonna address this comment here because it's going to. So X-Men actually did sell 1 million copies back then. The trick is that Comic-Con is giving you the direct market numbers, and the period we're talking about here, there was the newsstand, and the newsstand was huge. So Comic-Con has very accurate data. I love that site. I like the guy. I think very, very helpful. But you do have to note that there's a period.
Anything before 96.
Yeah, about 96, and maybe even a little bit later, where there's a bunch of newsstand numbers that add a lot. But and this is the weird part about the newsstand is the pricing was different. So this is where, people will talk about, oh, the newsstand sold a lot more. Well, yeah, it did. It went to a lot more places. However, even the newsstand numbers that we have rarely take into account what was pulped. And pulping is when you send your comics to a grocery store, you sell, say, 10 copies of something, you sell 2, you've got 8 copies at the end of the month, you rip the cover off of 8 comics, and you send them back as proof that you've pulped them or destroyed them.
And then you give them to the mob so they can sell them at 50 cents a piece.
Exactly. Yeah, they go into a little, like a lot of ones where I live. You had a little box outside, and free comics or tins, whatever. You just you handed them out. But we rarely capture that. So by some estimations, we think that a lot of comics, anywhere from half to 2/3 of the comics sent out were pulped, like a huge amount. And that's where the newsstand was healthy, in that it was getting comics into a lot of other places, but it was unhealthy in that it was really fictional of what's getting sold. And just to complete that thought, some people have said, well, isn't that what's happening in the direct market today? Not exactly, because the comic shop is not ripping the comic up. They're not being pulped. They're not being reimbursed for those comics. They are buying. It's a much better deal for the publisher because they're just getting their money and they don't really care what happens. The direct market then has to figure out how to get rid of it. But that's why it's a funny thing that there. So the belief is that X-Men did not sell 1 million copies. No. So the X-Men #1, the Jim Lee with the multiple covers, there's enough stats out there that suggest that sold several million copies. But in the 70s and 80s, I don't know if it was at 1 million copies in the 70s. In the early
no, I wasn't talking about 70s and 80s.
Late 80s.
Late 80s, when Jim Lee came on board.
Yeah.
When Jim Lee's X-Men was selling around 750,000. And then X-Men #1, when they launched that series, we all know it's like 8 million sales.
7.
Like
7.
7?
7 million.
I hear fluctuating numbers on that.
There's been multiple. It's somewhere in that 7 to 8 range, and then
whatever. It's way higher than the second best comic ever.
Which was X-Force at 5 million.
Like, so it's millions and millions, and we can't even have a comic today. It's not even possible for a comic today to do 1 million copies. Like, it's not even. Yeah. I remember when CB Cebulski was like, "Oh, I'm ready for $1 million." Like, dude, that Star Wars thing you did was pure fraud. Like, that's never going to happen again. Not with 2,000 shops. If the only people selling your comics is comic shops, there's only 2,000 of them. Divide 1 million by 2,000 and see how many issues they have to sell.
Yeah, it ignores the hundreds of thousands that went into Hot Topics.
Yeah, because it's the state of the industry. And you're right, Perch. We have to count those newsstand things, and that's totally valid. argument, but it's also not the fault of the industry back like that. They had that market. And I approve. I used to fire me up when people would make fun of Jim Lee trying to get books in Walmarts. And it's like, yeah, I get the funny little memes. Okay. But dude, that's conceptually, that's on the right track, because there's way more Walmarts than there are comic book stores. Right. And they get way more foot traffic. So getting just selling a book in Walmart's a huge opportunity. You could sell quite a bit.
Yeah,
sorry, but you know what I'm saying? It is.
I mean, it'll take about 2 years, but yeah.
I'm not trying to promote anyone else. I'm not trying to
crowdfund it and then sell it to Walmart first.
I'm not trying to promote anyone else's business model. I'm just simply saying getting a book sold in a giant major retail chain like that is smart business. Doesn't mean everything else attached to it is smart business. But it's the right man. We need newsstand back, or we need something that's equivalent. We can't rely on direct sales.
No,
and expect the industry to really grow, because direct, that would require there to be comic book shops all over the place, and basically comic shops to be hot topics, and there's just not.
You need a feeder system.
And
that's what the newsstand was. It was a feeder.
Comics have to be in more places at the end of the day, and we need to recognize those places in the 80s. The newsstand, they don't exist today, so it's that people are not going into a gas station anymore, or very rarely. So getting into that,
2 times a day.
Well, most people are not going into a gas station every day. They're paying at the pump and they're getting out because they don't want to talk to anybody.
With how many places are selling like legitimate food? There's 1,000 people through a Giant Eagle, Get Go, a Sheetz, or a Wawa on every single day.
Yeah. So keep in mind, beggars can't be choosers, and I'm not identifying like where. The key point is comics need to be in more places, and I say that as a retailer. I mean, that doesn't hurt my business for comics to be in more places, no matter what Dennis Berger says or anybody. That is, comics in more places equals more exposure. More exposure equals more fans equals sales. Wherever.
Right.
I agree.
No,
100%.
that sounds like a business plan, and I don't know if that'll work.
Yeah, we're. By the way, Chase, you missed it. We developed this concept that was called a business plan, where you plan what you're going to do with your business. I thought it was brilliant.
I work with individual clients, and they come in for appointments, usually about 30 minutes or so at a time, sometimes longer, sometimes shorter, and doing consultation work. And these folks, I leave comic books on the desk, and in the front office, and people are like, when did you buy those? Not where, but when did you buy those? And I was like, I just bought them a few hours ago, and they're like, where? They're like, where did you buy those? And I was like, well, at the comic shop. They're like, they still make comic books? People ask me that all the time. People ask me, they still make comic books?
Yeah, that's something I wanted to touch on. And I went on, the conversation went on, but back on the vending machine topic, one of the reasons I was talking about the foot traffic and things like that, because I don't have Chase's anecdotal. I'm glad that, Chase, you brought that up, because there was there's a YouTube series I used to watch. It's been on hiatus because of the plague. But it's called Comic Book Palace. It's got this dude who's got a comic book store.
Yeah, it's great.
It's really great. Yeah, it's just a guy filming in a comic shop and people talking about comics. Really fun. But there was one episode where this girl came in and she didn't even know comics were a thing. She was like, I saw the Wonder Woman movie. I didn't even know that they made Wonder Woman comics. Her world, it blew my mind, because I'm a comic book guy, right? So to me, it's so natural that Wonder Woman comes from comics. But in her vision of the world was Wonder Woman was a thing. And then she's like, there's a comic book for Wonder Woman? Backwards.
Yeah.
So, and then she found there's a comic book store, and she walked in, her whole world transformed. And then she's made for a couple episodes. She comes back and you can see her, and she's buying comics, and she's getting all these different things. And of course, some of the comics she's buying, I'm just sitting there kind of cringing, going, ugh, but whatever. She's new. She's enjoying it. And I'm like, there are a ton of people like this out there that don't even know what they're missing. They don't even know it exists.
This comes back to, once again, it was one thing when these comic book films and TV shows were all licensed out to, Sony or Fox or whatever. Now, DC has absolutely no goddamn excuse for this because they've been owned by Warner Brothers since the fucking 70s. But Marvel at least had an excuse for a good number of years. They don't anymore, not since Disney bought them, and Warner doesn't have any excuse for it either. Why in the hell they're not sticking right before that post-credit scene in every goddamn movie, a 3-second shot of the comic shop locator? It's not hard.
It's not, but the reason is because that commercial will cost more than they'll make off a comic book. Like, you're
sticking it in the credits, dude.
I get what you're saying. I'm not arguing like you're wrong, Doc. I'm just trying to be the devil's advocate. Like, why? And I think it goes back to that point I was talking about earlier. They've gotten so huge that scraping for pennies, which is what they would consider them. You ever heard that I heard this, a long time ago. I remember someone was trying to tell me how rich Bill Gates was. He's like, he's so rich, he loses money to bend down and pick up a quarter. It was like, oh yeah. Cause like Marvel, it's the same analogy. They lose money to try to spend time promoting comics because that's way down on the totem pole of their revenue stream. And you're right. We talked about this and like, you got to keep that seed, growing. But from their standpoint, these little bean counters,
fine.
They don't see that picture.
Then tell Diamond or Lunar or UCS, hey, make a little comic shop locator thing. Make this video. We'll slap it in right after the key grips and the best boy.
Yeah.
You know what the problem with this thing you have going on, Doc, is?
Is it a business plan?
Yeah. It just makes way too much sense. No one's gonna buy into this.
It involves too much planning.
The challenge you have is
and thought.
It's the most pathetic answer, I think. Having seen a little bit of how this goes down, the reality is a few things. The movie division and the people putting this together, most of them are probably like that girl going and see Wonder Woman and does not know the comics exist. It's amazing to me when they say, there's been interviews. In fact, there was one for Suicide Squad where there's this comment made during the interview of like, we're taking off stories like the old comics they used to make, past tense.
Yeah.
And they legitimately don't know they exist. So of course they're not going to insert the stuff into the film. It would be free marketing. And in many cases, if the groups were aligned, it would. But that's where, and I know some people have mocked me for it, that's where I do have at least a little bit of hope for some of the changes that DC is making right now with the alignment. I do think you're going to see a lot more cross promotion. Now you're going to see fewer comics too, but I do think that kind of disconnect in the business, I think
that's not a bad thing though.
No,
right?
I think it's a good thing.
The loss of comics, I mean, like.
Oh yeah.
My favorite time of comics, Marvel had like 30.
Yeah.
Back in the 80s, we don't need a comic line to have 100 different titles to choose from. There's too many. If you like comics, I think 30 probably has a good variety of something you'll find that you like. And if you don't, we live in an era where there's probably more comic book publishers than there's ever been. So someone's making something you want.
I definitely think we're going to get fewer comics, and I think that's not a bad thing. Like you say, I think that they are going to look at the comics and they'll look at it like portfolio properties. So they're going to say, well, these 5 comics are ones that are going to be, like we talked about before, they'll be good hot topic comics. Sell them there. We're not going to try and, if we continue with a new run of Hawkman with Vendetti, we're not going to sell that in Hot Topic. It's not a good crossover audience, but we are going to sell it over here. I would hope that. The thing I would hope that I just never see people talking about, because it always gets into this extreme point, is people make the case that comics needs to find the 10-year-olds, the new audience they need, and they do. That is a true statement. They absolutely simultaneously, they have to keep their current audience, unless they're willing to completely step off the cliff, run their business down to zero, and build it back up from scratch again, which anybody in business would say is stupid. So you have to You have to juggle your core portfolio and grow it, and that seems to be the art that people in comics cannot figure out. I don't know. As he points out, the New Mutants movie, which I would love to go see if it was open. It couldn't. The creator's name was spelled wrong.
Wait, was it Bill Sienkiewicz?
No.
Or they got Claremont's name wrong?
No, it was great. All right, somebody in the chat will let us know in roughly 60 seconds, and then yes. No, it wasn't even something.
About that noise.
But don't worry about that.
I mean, I can understand getting Sienkiewicz's name wrong. I do it purposely because he's a jackwagon, but I literally just spell it phonetically and then be like, "Sue me, dick."
Well, but in the company itself, that's something that you'd think somebody would get right. I mean,
but I mean, I guess back, as I said in the chat, like, you could make a little just still image. You could pay somebody like $10 on Fiverr to make a comic shop. Like, hey, go buy these fucking comics. Yes, we still make them.
Yeah. As people are pointing out, it was Bob. It was Bob
McLeod.
And it's just, I mean, what do you say about that? I mean, it's just dumb.
I think getting comics into public places, not all of them need to be Walmart, that gets eyeballs, at least seeing that they exist. They can walk by and be like, "Oh, what's that comic? I remember when I was a kid, we had a comic. I didn't know they." Then now
when am I getting my Rooster book?
That puts a seed in their head of like, "Hey, this stuff now exists."
Just go get your Rooster book at Walmart, dude. I mean, everyone else is so far.
I can't even talk without you guys bringing a bitch up.
With a map. That's all I'm saying. It is a frustrating world where I do think the interest is there. If you look, and again, it's not learning the lessons from the industry. When you have Deb Pilkey and you have Rain Telmeyer and you have others just destroying. I mean, the next book of Dogman that I think launched today, I don't know, soon. It's got a 5 million initial print run. I mean, and they'll sell that. They'll sell through that.
Yeah.
There's tons of interest.
But because here's the thing, though, they found their audience, and this is what I was gonna try to find a way to transition when opportunity. But what comics is really suffering right now is finding their audience, and I think they're trying to chase an audience that's not there, or it's there in very small numbers that's not really interested, and they're trying to be like, no, you try these comics. I'm like, comics, no, really try. Like instead of fostering the audience that they have, which is like what they did in the late 80s and early 90s, and just said, but Raina Telgemeier hit a certain audience and then was like, boom, surgical precision strike, like just hone in on that audience. And but here's the thing now is not only are they hitting, the comics aren't getting the right audience and they're going after certain crowds, but then they're also trying to mimic what other industries are doing. And it doesn't work that way because you just become that product. Then if you want to sell like children graphic books, those aren't comics, then make those books. Don't say our comics can be just like that. No, Raina Telgemeier is not selling 20-page $5 comics. Right. She's not doing it. And comics, they're trying to market them like manga and do stuff. No, mangas aren't 20-page, like saying the comic industry is in an identity crisis, I think, where they don't really understand what they are, and they see other people are successful. Going, well, these things are success. We can be like that, but you're not that. Find what your audience is and market the crap out of it. Try to be as successful as you can with that audience, and understand, like, it's good to diversify and expand as wide as you can to try to reach as much people as you can. But understand that, like, look, there's gonna just be some people who aren't interested in buying porn, right? Like,
whoa!
I know. I'm hard to believe.
I feel attacked.
And Brian, that's great.
Well, did you see what I'm saying? Like, the porn industry doesn't be like, how can we reach out to all of those fundamental
evangelical Christians?
Yeah, like, we got to get that audience. We're just not making enough money. It's like, no, dude. They're just focusing on the guys who want the porn and getting them to just buy more.
It'd be like rats getting pissed, Arby's getting pissed off that they're not selling enough DVD players.
Serious.
Yeah, it is. I mean, the market's out there. It's crazy. Hey, shout out to Deputy Russ Indiegogo right here. There's a link on the screen. Go check that. I think launched just today. So there's some great, to the point, there are some great projects out there, and across the board, whether you're in one camp, another camp, 50 camps, it doesn't really matter. There's lots of good projects out there by good people. I think you can find they're almost, is any audience not being served today somewhere? I'm not talking enough. There is a comic for everyone at this point, isn't there?
I honestly believe that. I really do.
There's even comics for people that don't read comics.
Yeah.
They don't read them, but they exist.
Here's the thing. When we talk about that audience, I think that a lot of people are going for, I see Marvel a lot these days going for a female audience. I believe wholeheartely that audience would go and buy comics if they freaking knew that they were there. I'm serious. It's just the market's there. You know what I mean? The market is there, and they're just not marketing it. They're horrible at it. It's the worst thing. They may as well be shooting themselves in both feet every single day for their marketing campaign. That's what they do.
So
that's comics.
This kind of goes back to something I was mentioning earlier about, comics is one of those weird industries where you're looked at weird for trying to make a profit off your own book. Remember remember that interview, what's his nuts, Kirkman had about working with Marvel, where they weren't really advertising his book, and it was like, hey, if there's a marketing budget or something, I can advertise this book for y'all. It's no problem. They just gave him the stink eye,
and they told him no.
Right. And it's
crazy story.
Yeah, and it's really weird, and it's just something I've learned, as a creator, you gotta be your own marketing team, your own whatever, just to make sure your book is successful. A lot of these companies just aren't really marketing these books, and there's a lot of treasure out there.
There's a
but like you said, there's probably an audience for the Riri Williams Iron Man, but they're not actively marketing to it. They're just making it and saying hey, you know what, it's here, come get it. Well, I guess if no one's buying it, it's because you're racist. No, you're not marketing to that audience. You're not actually going out and chasing that audience and making it done. Rags is actually designed, I'm tooting my own horn here, but Rags is designed to be it's made for veterans, right? So if you've served in the military and you've been through some shit, this book is for you, but it's also designed for where Joe Snuffy on the side of the road can read it and understand what's going on too. So,
but I have some thoughts on the issue of marketing, and it comes down to a very simple thing. Anyone that was an A through C student in any marketing school is working somewhere other than comics.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so you get the D students of the marketing schools, and they are all terrible at their jobs because they were the D students of their marketing schools.
Which is why I'm curious to see what this new DC guy will do. And it may be great, it may blow up, but it feels like the first time they have gotten a legitimate CMO type role to do something. And I'm curious what happened. Does he come in and does he shake things up and scare the hell out of people because he's doing it a different way? Does he come in and immediately submit and just do things the way it's been done? I'm fascinated to see what's going to happen.
I just want to address something that Drew Bree says in the chat. He says another issue no one's discussing at all is that physical media is dead.
It is not.
Movies, music, and comics. And
he's right.
He's right, but I think it's not comprehensive in that statement. So there's a lot of things in media that have physical parts have died, but there are certain types of media that you can't kill, right? You cannot kill the vinyl music industry with digital. It's antithetical. They're mutually exclusive. You can't. There's never going to be vinyl fans who are like, yeah, you know what, MP3s are for me. The ones that are into it, they're into that. And now you have that industry. Now it could go away. I'm not saying that industry will last forever, but it exists now, and digital can't replace it. Digital also cannot replace the comic book industry as we know it now because of the collectibility, which is why I think it's so important that every comic producer, publisher, creator out there at least recognize the collectible aspect of the comic industry, because if you ever get rid of that, then comics are only valuable based on their consumption. They become disposable. They become like music and movies and things like that, which very much are replaced. I pretty much only get movies and music digitally these days myself. I do buy a few Blu-rays that are special to me, but for the most part, but I don't care about a physical collectible product. But my comics, I buy all of them physically, except for old trades that have no value anyway, and it's a little cheaper to get it digitally, and I'd have a space issue. But all floppies, I don't buy a single floppy digitally. Now, you could change my mind if you say, hey, we're going to sell them at dirt cheap prices. It's 99 cents for the digital versus $3, $4, or $5 for the physical. I'll be like, all right.
Yeah,
but as
like,
of right now,
like
that's not the case. That's not the case right now. So
it's a consumption problem, I think.
So collectability, as long as collectability is there, it's like Magic cards. Like, people don't want to stop. They don't want to buy the digital. Well, they kind of, Magic has this weird digital thing too, but Magic players want the physical cards. They have value. You can turn around and resell them. They go up. No one wants digital baseball cards.
Isn't that crazy that even exists? Holy cow. Digital Magic. Oh man, that made me almost vomit in my mouth a little when I saw that app. I'm like, how much are you paying for digital fake things that aren't real and baseball cards? Crazy, man.
I have a very
go for it, Doc.
I have a very distinct thought process on this, and it's something that I've actually been thinking about for a good number of years. The difference between comic books and books, let's be honest, books, because if you look at, I understand that books and periodicals are not printed the same. Comics are somewhere between the two of them because they are both fiction that are timeless. But at the same time, they have a periodic release schedule like magazines. Magazines are dead. Movies and music are digital only. But books, if you look at physical books versus digital, they're tracking the exact same way that comics have been for the last 15 years. And it is because there is a difference between active entertainment and passive entertainment. And reading is a active entertainment activity versus movies and music, which are incredibly passive. You sit there, you do not engage with the media at all. And the only thing that you would do is, every engagement with the media is actually inconvenient. Getting up and changing a movie, getting up and changing a disc. But the actual enjoyment of the media is done entirely passively. You don't engage it. Your eyes don't even need to move across the screen. Whereas reading, even in digital format, you're still moving your eyes around the screen. You're still changing pages. Either scroll, even if it's a endless PDF, you're scrolling up, scrolling down, flipping pages, even digitally. Your eyes are moving across the page. There is a very specific way of that you are actively engaging the media that you don't have with movies and music. Video games is kind of weird because it's kind of a simulation of a physical activity. And that's kind of different. And additionally, the media is irrelevant to the activity that you're engaging in with games.
You said a lot of things there, and I think you're spot on a lot of your analysis. There's a tipping point in technology. When you think about digital disruption, which is really what we're talking about, there's a couple things that have to fall into place in order for things to jump from one end to the other. And if you looked at music and movies in particular, it became more annoying to buy a physical product, take it home, unwrap it, take the disc out, fire up your machine, put the disc in, launch it up, and go. Want to watch a different movie, you have to take the disc out, go locate another disc, put it in. That process became a barrier.
Just so that you could sit there and do nothing.
So you could sit there and media. And so for a long time, it struggled. But then when Netflix came out, we got these services where it was just really easy. You didn't have to wait. You didn't have to search. The usability was quick to find those movies. It tipped. And suddenly, there are still some people who collect physical movies, absolutely, and there will always be that audience. but it changed from a push to a pull. And what I mean by that is it used to be that it was easier to buy a movie, take it home physically, and watch it. And now it's easier to just find it digitally, just for convenience. So you have to actually put work into going off and finding that movie. Music is somewhat the same way. The thing that also impacted music is it broke the album model where you could just buy the song you wanted. And that was another big driver. But comics hasn't had that moment yet. And I do think, as I've said in the videos, a lot of people disagree with me. I think it will, but there's one huge barrier, and that you don't watch comics from a TV. It's called 12-foot UI. You have to have the comic a foot from your face when you're reading it. And lots of people have TV in their homes. TVs are everywhere, but you don't have a device that's a foot from your face other than a phone for most people. But the phone is too small of a format for most people to consume comics as they are today.
Yeah.
So until you have that barrier, it's going to be stuck.
Additionally, and I entirely forgot my conclusory statement.
Oh, sorry.
And it's that people, when you are involved in active entertainment, people want to interact with the physical object. Whereas with passive entertainment, you don't give a shit what format it's presented in. Yeah. Digital, physical, it doesn't matter.
And in the chat, Horizon says, tablets. And you're absolutely right. Tablets are that method. But the problem is everyone has a TV. Not everyone has a tablet. They are not seen as a must-buy commodity right now. Apple wishes they were.
Yeah, they're not ubiquitous in society.
Not yet.
Until they're ubiquitous, and I do think they will be, then I think it will flip the same way. And I don't think physical comics are all going to go away. I think the collector market's still there and all the things we're saying, but the momentum and the driver will be digital because of the convenience factor. But until that convenience factor exists, it's not going to gain momentum. That's the rub. And by the way, people have said, and they will, and they're saying that absolutely, if you have a tablet and you've bought into that ecosystem, it's great. But you are, from the stats we see, you're maybe 1 out of 50 right now.
Well, here's the thing. Like, I like to chime in on this subject a lot because I am not like a one side or the other kind of person. I am very much, I have an iPad Pro, which I think is the best way to read a digital comic.
For sure. Me too.
You're right.
Beautiful screen, easy to hold. I love it. I love it so much that I buy my comics physically. I stick them in a bag. I get home and then I stick them in the box and then I go and read a digital copy of it. Like that's how I do things now, because I don't want to have to worry about damaging. I'm anal about my books. Like I don't want to damage them. I don't want to get fingerprints. I want to be able to read in my bed and not have to worry about falling asleep and then wake up the next morning and my comics all crumpled because I rolled on top. I can eat dinner. I can eat Cheetos, whatever I want to do while I'm reading there's no big deal. Plus I can take my iPad with me wherever I go and boom, I've got hundreds of comics at my disposal that I can pull up and read at any time.
It's great.
It's fantastic. The reason I have this device is purely media consumption, and comics are a big part. So be that as it may, I still am the kind of person I'm like, dude, I'm not going to buy your digital books. Like, I don't want digital comics. I want comics to be available digitally.
Right.
But I buy comics in part for the fun of collecting them. Now, some people like to speculate. I don't speculate. If you like that, that's awesome. I did it one time. If you don't speculate, that's also awesome. If you don't even collect, that's also fine. I don't actually care, but I care about, for my enjoyment, I like to collect them. I like to see my collection build. I like to go over to my friend's house and be like, hey, show my collections. I like to go through their collections and talk about our books. I like to pull them out, just look at the cover sometime. There's just some enjoyment about that. Like I mentioned earlier to Brian, like it's nice to be able to like go through and be like, hey, that book that I bought, a couple years back, like it turned out to be a big deal and now it's worth $100. Like there's a sense of a little bit of euphoric feeling of like, that's cool. Like, hey, like that itself is a bit of value because it made you feel good and it didn't cost anything extra. I didn't go pay $100 for the book. Like I just, the fact that can possibly happen, it happens very, very, very rarely. That's why I don't actually promote speculation. I think it's a losing game, but you can hit the lottery a couple times. I really, really, really wish that I didn't start collecting New Mutants at X-Force #1. If I would have jumped in 2 comics earlier, I'd have $1,000 issue, but I didn't.
Yeah.
But whatever. It's cool. Like it's fun to know that, and you cannot replace that at all with digital. And the same thing with vinyl. There's similar hobbies. Vinyl collectors, I think, would understand what I'm talking about. It's like, yeah, you can go get that music that's on this disc, but can you own a first edition copy of whatever special release that this is? And can you listen to it on analog? You can't. And for people that matters to, that's a big deal. Now, people that don't matter to, well, they're not buying that stuff anyway. And people that don't give two craps about collecting comics or baseball cards or coins or stamps or whatever people collect, they don't care. Well, they're probably not buying comics anyway either. And some are. And you should absolutely try to get their business if you can. But don't cut off one side of the business. You know what I'm saying? Like,
it's why I think comics has a tough road ahead of it, because they need to find these new markets. The most logical, viable market, and they kind of sense this, is to go after YA, because you've got a bunch of books and a bunch of things being sold there. You can safely go into the Walmarts and Targets and other places and have your book alongside other books, and you can be aligned with Scholastic and everything else. It all makes sense. The challenge, though, is that market is still physical. There are some digital books, but the bulk of the money is still coming in physical, and that audience, which is younger, typically does not have a tablet. You have an iPad Pro. I have one too. I'm not going to give my daughter's iPad Pros at 7 and 10. That will come later. So they're stuck with physical. Meanwhile, I think they also recognize that Shonen Jump is doing and others that you have to have some digital strategy somewhere. But now that's a third audience you have to chase. Well, your collector audience. And for a lot of the people in these companies, and this is the kind of the big concluding fact of why we don't have better plans. Got a bunch of people in leadership positions making under $40,000 a year, living in New York. Why would you? I mean, what are you going to do with your life? You're going to go and work extra hours at the office to try and, make Papa Disney more money by breaking open a new market strategy? You're not going to do that. And the people who are in the senior leadership positions, their whole concern is, how do I get myself one day finagled into working for Disney proper and get out of this comic stuff? Because that's where the real money is. And so who's solving this problem? It's none of the people we talked about. And it's going to be the indies, I think.
Well, to be real quick, fair question though. I tuned in on the part. I mean, I listened to the whole thing, but the part where you said you're not going to get your daughter an iPad Pro, at least not anytime soon. I get that. That's an expensive purchase, and I'm not in any way saying everyone go get iPad Pros. Like but are you going to give your little children $5 comics?
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. I hear Wes talk about that all the time too. He's like, if your kids aren't treating things nice, like that's a big, like they're no longer kid purchases, regardless of the digital or the physical. And comics, I agree with everything you said. And adding on top of that, they have a bigger problem in the fact that they're starting to become out of reach of a lot of certain potential customers because they're no longer appealing. And you need to get back to that disposable candy bar price where everyone's like, I got some loose change lying around. Oh, a comic book, that sounds like fun. Like people don't feel like it's costing them something. You used to be able to be an impulse buy and, oh, that issue of Spider-Man looks cool. Cost me nothing. Here we go. Now people are like, how much does that cost?
Well, and on top of that, it's written in a way not appealing. I mean, I tried books out for my kids. Some people think other than one tiny little script I had my daughter read as a joke, which everybody knew what that moment was. I mean, they're reading the comics and they're forming their own opinions. I don't hover over them going, hey, Captain Marvel sucks, right? Say it sucks. No, they're reading and they're making their own opinions. And I tried them out on a lot of the books that are intentionally for YA girls. And it's like, they go to One Piece every time. They go to My Hero Academia every time. It's like, this has more action. This is what I do. It's just every single time. And I can put Wasp down in front of them and I can put, One Piece, and they're going to immediately go One Piece just 100% of the time. And then if One Piece has got a big collection of stories there for $10 and Wasp is sitting over here at 22 pages for $5, I mean, as a parent, like, yeah, I'm going to give them what they want, and it's a hell of a lot cheaper. That's the problem that we're facing.
That's a pretty big problem. I mean, that's huge when it comes to comics, because
it's a big Twinkie.
Yeah, they're looking for an audience that they're not marketing to it outside of comic shops, because we already know. I go to a comic shop, I very rarely to never see a girl there. I'm just being straight up. That's kind of the realistic world that we live in, and there's got to be another way. I don't have a good answer, but
really counter
manga's
everything I've
killing
been
it.
told.
Cocaine.
Cocaine.
Put cocaine.
I'm telling you, it's packaged.
Here's the thing. I think I look at it. It's a hobby, right? And I've throughout my many years been involved in several different hobbies, but I've never really had a hobby that was super cheap. Most hobbies have some level of investment, especially as an adult. Now, most adults that have hobbies are perfectly fine with it because it's their pastime. It's the thing that they love doing, and people will spend money to a certain extent to do the thing that they love, even if it's just sitting around and gelling to a TV. Some people will pay tons of money for the elite cable's going away, but elite cable packages, satellite packages, just to have all the TV that they want. People will buy comics. I used to be into Nitro RC cars, and let me tell you, man, you can spend some money on these things. I was a competitive Magic player for several years. I was spending a couple grand a year on Magic cards.
Cars.
Real cars. That can go way up. Then you start getting into, but I'm trying to keep the lower budget hobbies there, Doc.
It's
but
funny.
You see what I'm saying? Like, so comics. My point to all this is comics need to start figuring out how to appeal to hobbyists again. Get into that interest where people want to be in the comics hobby, and the rest takes care of itself, right? As long as there's good product out there, people will find. There was junk. Every hobby I played or did things, like was RC cars. There was junk RC car. I'm not going to buy that crappy thing. But then there was the good stuff, and I'm same with comics. Maybe I don't want to buy, Dan Slott's Iron Man, but maybe I'm like, oh, Rags. Well, this is good stuff. Like you're going to find the good. You need to get into the hobby. You need to have a desire to partake. And I think comics is losing that. They're just taking for granted, people are already here. We already have comic fans. Well, no, you have a dwindling pool, and it's not cool. Like you gotta find people like that sounds. I want to do that too.
You got to reach out. I think that's as we talked about before, and as we wrap up here, I think that it is. There's this gut reaction on social media often when comic publishers and pros say that they want to find new markets, and there's this kind of gut retching, but they do need to. That is something they need to do. The challenge that I always have with it is like they're not succeeding. They're not succeeding in big numbers. You can always point to a few, but they're not finding these comics. In many cases, it goes down to that business plan. They want to appeal to YA. They want to appeal to a new audience. I mean, the one that always strikes me is Mosaic. Mosaic was a book right in the center.
This is so terrible.
No, but it was right in the center of the Inhumans debacle, which was its own giant mess. And they specifically said we're going to appeal to African American male sports fans with this book. And there was a press release that came out with it. I got a little note along with a bunch of other retailers talking about this audience that this book was going to appeal to. And I mean, okay. But then what happened is they took the comic, same price point, same page count, same cover, and they shipped it to the same spot where this new audience didn't exist there, and then the burden was placed on the stores. I'll never forget going to a retailer summit after that, and there was almost this blame by Marvel of like, why didn't you guys hustle to get more people to come into your shop? It's like, what are you talking about? Do you think that the retailers are going to go out into the city with like sandwich boards and like, hey, sports fans who are not white, come buy Mosaic? Keep talking about? Like, yes, retailers should absolutely be pushing for new people to come into their shop. Absolutely. But like, come on. I don't have the Walmart marketing budget to go do that. You guys are insane.
And the fact that it was already a character that had previously existed, because it's exactly the same character that they launched in NYX 15 years earlier.
And it was frustrating. You're right. I definitely deserve more sandwiches in the face. But it's a funny part. This audience is there. This audience that you hear about that people make fun of, this new diverse different audience, it is out there.
They are. Absolutely.
They're just not marketing to it.
They're just not marketing to it. Yeah. And so doesn't matter. You can want it as much as you want, but until you get them, really doesn't matter.
Yeah, and while they're simultaneously not marketing it to the desired audience and pissing on the current audience. This sounds like a brilliant business plan.
Yeah. No, it is, and in a lot of cases, it's because you've got creators who come in, they're freelancers, they're paid nothing, they have no financial stake in the. I mean, they're not getting stock, they're not getting any encouragement to keep going, other than keep making, in some cases, very little money.
Poverty.
So it's like, well, okay. So what, and so the creator comes in. It's like, yeah, I'm on freelance. I don't have any long-term commitment. I'm going to do the book I want to do, and I can't blame them for that. I mean, why not? Sure. The challenge is that's so the creators sometimes get irritable about, as we've seen, but they're not invested in the company's long-term success. They're trying to push their own book out, and like so this is a system that's set up to fail. That's the problem.
God, and that sucks so much because comics are, God, one of the biggest parts of my life. And so when I think about this, I'm like, well, we already know that 100% there are comics for everyone at every single freaking publisher, pretty much. I mean, across the board, literally that is true. And so when I think about this, it makes my brain want to melt, knowing that the companies are doing it wrong. It's their responsibility, but they're putting the blame on the consumer and on the shops. It's mind melting. It's absolutely insane.
There's a term for this in the industry I work in, and stop me if you heard this before, but ass backwards.
Yeah.
It's completely ass backwards to blame the customer for your failure if you're absolutely not marketing towards them. Like, how dare you not buy my stuff? Like, I've never heard of you. Like, oh, okay.
and by the way,
how dare you not be up on the.
There's a question in the chat, and I think, why do you guys pretend that people don't buy digital comics? Well, people do, but not a lot. The numbers are anemic to where they should be.
10% of digital, and it's physical.
And that's on the high end,
and it's stayed there for a decade.
I read them.
It's between 6 and 10%, is my understanding.
I read them, but it's after I put in that Marvel code,
Sure, but the other problem is it's the audience here. The digital market is not going out and advertising itself. Comixology and these other places are not going out and advertising itself to people outside of comic shops. They're trying to take the same tiny audience and say, hey, why don't you buy digital instead? And of course they're getting resistance because the existing audience is collector market. They like the physical. They're barking up completely the wrong tree. Why does Comixology spend a dime on San Diego Comic-Con or any of these existing sources? Why aren't they going out and, advertising other places?
That is a huge thing that we haven't talked about. I believe you're touching on a great point, is that comics aren't just the thing you read. It's also, like, I know this word gets used all the time, but a community. Like, there's things that are involved. If you're a comic fan, for me, I'll just use myself as an example. For me, getting up, every Wednesday and going to the store, I make a ritual out of it. Like it's all about going to the store. I get to see the staff that I've gotten to know at the store. And I'm real, friendly terms with, and they're, happy to see me, and I'm happy to see them. We have a conversation. I see some regulars sometimes in the store, and hey, what's up? And what are you getting? And you're talking, you're like sharing, you're seeing enthusiasm from other, even if you don't talk to them, you can just see there's a sort of an aura. It's like when you watch a movie or a concert, it's always better to do it live or with other people, because there's this energy that you don't have like sitting at home watching a concert on TV. It's not the same. And comics are like that. And then also add on top of that, not just going to the store, then going to a comic convention, man. The first time I went to Comic-Con, which was years ago, but blew my mind. And then I got to watch that grow. And if you've never been to a major Comic-Con, like Comic-Con, if you're a comic fan, it's just this huge deal. And there's that enthusiasm is so infectious, and it just makes you feel like more bonded to your hobby and the interest, and you want to know more. And that you can't get that with just, I scrolled through my phone, clicked the tab and got I don't feel that about mobile games. I play a lot of mobile games, but whatever.
But you know what? There's one.
I agree. He's hitting like every
nail
on the head right there. The only thing I can say just objectively, the only thing that's slightly better than going to a Comic-Con and taking pictures with other people is actually going to Comic-Con and having a booth and sitting behind there and having people come by your booth and be like, hey, I enjoy your stuff. Please sign my stuff. You're like, holy shit. Yeah, sure. Here, sign. Here, I'm signing it for you. Or you see like your friend from high school who's like, holy crap, what are you doing here? I'm like, well, obviously I have a booth here. What are you doing here? Like, yeah. Being at a con, enjoying it, and interacting with the community as a whole is like the greatest thing ever.
It is, and the con experience is great, and I hope we can get back to it someday, where we're not all walking around with masks, because that will make both it will help with the smell though. So wait a minute, maybe that's not such a bad plan, but it is. No, I'm not.
EO's going to go right through that.
Hey guys, really awesome talking with y'all. I'm going to head out. Got so much to do before I head to sleep. So yeah. Great talking with y'all.
Chase.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Chase, for dropping by. We should wrap up. We've just gone on forever, but there's so many pieces. We've gone all over the place in a lot of good ways, I think, and maybe it comes down to kind of what we talked about at the very beginning. It's the plan. Whatever is missing more than anything else, it's a plan that's missing.
We need to market this concept of business plan to these companies that are in business that should be making plans. We need to convince them that this is an idea that they should go for.
It is crazy that you have a bunch of YouTubers and people, whether you're in one group or another, you're anti-Comicsgate, Comicsgate, non-Comicsgate, Comicsgate, Red and Black, whatever it happens to be, whatever group you align to. Wolfpack, that's right. It is crazy to me to this day that there's so many people, and as a retailer, I appreciate it, and hopefully others do, but I know some don't, that the community itself is generating a lot of the plan. Whatever side, I mean, if people are giving lots of opinions and suggestions, and I hope that in the midst of being pissed at each other over everything else, at least some people can recognize that this is a gift that in a lot of cases fans are giving these publishers. They're giving them the answers in a lot of cases. I don't know business, but yeah, go ahead.
Well, real quick, Zach, kind of put this into the best possible description a long time ago. If you put everything that us idiots on YouTube say into the universal translator, it's, I want to give you more money. Here is how you can get more money from me.
It's true. I've got a video coming up on this at some point. I record way in advance, so I don't know when these things air, but it is about, you got passion, and very few other industries do you have this kind of passion of people who are so invested in this, willing to buy things they don't even want just because they're trying to complete their run. It is it's very unique, and I wish that the companies, the retailers, everybody would come to understand that better. I'll throw one thing out there because I have an idea that I pitched the guy who is Fox. I can't remember his name. He was their head of digital for Marvel at one point. They were trying to get into digital, and I was there with a couple other retailers, and I was doing some mobile work at the time, and I'd been in Japan. He's like, "What would you do?" And I said, "What I would do right now is I wouldn't try and make money off of digital at all. I would have your comic, I'd put your digital code in, but I'd have your digital code for 5 copies of the comic. And I would encourage people, get your current audience to buy the comic physically, take it home, and pass those 5 codes out to people who are not buying comics, their friends, their family, their kids, whatever else. And don't charge them for it. Just make it so that one purchase equals 5 free digital copies out there. Encourage them to put it on Facebook, Twitter, wherever it is. Just spread this. I think I said MySpace at the time because it was that time. But this,
hey, Tom never shit on us the way that
that's true. Does. But would that idea work today? I think that moment had passed, by the way. But what is that a way to kind of juice the distribution of digital?
Not in my opinion. And the reason why is because I think piracy is so prolific right now. I believe, I don't have numbers to back this up, so I'm just stating I believe this. But I believe quite strongly that piracy is the bulk of digital reading of comics. It's more than 50%. It's not like the old Napster days where it's like, oh, they're stealing 10% of our sales. Like, no, this is
like 80.
I feel like most people. And so digital, I think, is probably actually based on their low sales numbers. I could make an argument that maybe having digital exist at all right now is actually more detrimental because you're losing potentially more sales than you're actually gaining. But that's a different argument. The freebie stuff is more of maybe if you did that as a limited time thing.
Yeah.
Like if you said, hey, for this month, every month we're going to do, or every year on this month, we're going to be like, hand out every issue of Spider-Man comes with free, maybe like on Free Comic Book Day, right? You buy the issue, every issue that comes out on Free Comic Book Day that's not a free comic, the actual issues comes with free digital codes to hand out. That's a way of expanding Free Comic Book Day, right? So something like that I could get behind. But you don't want to, comics are already in a problem. They painted themselves into a corner where they're too expensive. They kept increasing costs to make up for revenue losses. And now they're at a point where they really can't raise them too much more because it's a breaking point. And if you run into this problem where the perceived value, right? You give someone something for free and you're like, oh, that's kind of neat. Assuming it's not a Dan Slott Iron Man book that you gave for free. And then they actually read it and go, this is really good. Where can I get more of this? And you say, oh, you want another copy of this? That's $5. And they're like, then their brain seizes up.
Yeah, and you can't start with Iron Man 2020.
Right, you know what I'm saying? Because they get Redbox for $1.99.
You could start with Trouble, though. And hopefully, are you guys, was this Good Memories, by the way? I don't know if you've even seen the Trouble limited series I'm going through right now.
I haven't.
I don't blame you, but come on, this is Aunt May.
Well, is that the one where Aunt May is like a floozy?
Yeah.
Trouble. I saw you post about it, and at first I was like, but then I was like, it's written by Mark Millar.
Oh yeah. It was
what?
And I remember buying it off the shelf.
So now I'm interested. I was like,
Millar and the Dodsons are doing the art.
Okay, now that's different. Now it's no, Mark Millar was doing that. Wow.
Yeah.
2003, Mark Millar, Terry and Rachel Dodson on the art, Axel Alonso, Joe Quesada, they were involved in kind of the
story.
Pit. Yeah. So I all 5 issues. I'm reviewing all 5 issues. I think number 2 dropped today. Every day a new review.
It was, and it was always they left it very open ended on whether or not it was just 2 random women.
Don't spoil.
Okay, fine.
So is it? I want to watch your reviews, but before I do, is it worth getting to read?
No.
Yes.
Or should I just watch your stuff and get spoiled?
I liked it.
Okay.
I liked it. I thought it was absurd, and I loved it.
I got all I need to know from Perch's answer. He said it all in one stand.
It is
that okay was like voluminous.
Experiment. I mean, it was an idea that to do a romance comic.
So get it on sale.
Yeah, I mean, it is a train. Yeah, I mean, you may enjoy it, but it is a train wreck of a comic. I mean,
okay.
I'm just saying it. And
the Comixology has their Marvel comics you absolutely must own for $2.99 per trade. Okay, here you go.
Here you go. Ron will hook you up. This one in Marvel is another one, definitely in that same time period to check out. But this one is interesting because when it launched, it was intended to be canon, which is true. And then the reaction of the comic caused them to say it wasn't canon. And, not to spoil anything, but you'll understand why.
I love how they can do that in modern comics. It's as canon, but we hate it. Okay, it's not canon, but you printed it. What are you talking about? Either undo it.
We didn't print anything. What the hell are you talking about?
Just like this next event is going to change the universe like you've never seen it change before, right before the next event that we do.
Canon doesn't work if it's selective, right? Like you either have to, it has to be you can't sit there and go, this portion of the movie is not actually canon.
I'm just gonna forget it.
You make these kinds of mistakes or whatever you're gonna do, you should live with it. That's part of the
or undo it. Just undo it. You can write a story, and you can even write an issue. That was all a dream. Okay, there you go. Like
it's
comic. You could just like one more day it.
One more day it. There you go.
Comic publishing, the Shaggy method. It wasn't me.
It was Yeah, there's a lot going on in that comic, but anyway, I want to thank all of you, and then of course Chase, who left us already for joining tonight. It went very long, but it was a fun conversation. I mean, I really appreciate all your thoughts here.
I had a blast.
Oh, by the way, that Perch, that second thumbs down is definitely mine. Then
it might be. There's always two guys. I don't know. I don't mind it. Whatever. I get the same clicks and money. You can all downvote. I don't care. I don't know.
Hey, it's good feedback. You should never expect to have 100. If you're getting 100% positive feedback, then you're probably just getting lip service. So
absolutely. I just want to know, I see from my analytics on YouTube, and I don't know if you guys see the same. By the way, Ash definitely has a channel. You should go check that out. Doc and Brian, you don't have channels, do you? Or do you?
I have a channel, but I don't really use it.
I have like 3 videos. I have a comic book room, my nerd room tour on there, and then also me cutting a issue of Iceman that I froze into a block of ice in half with a Sawzall.
Oh, that's neat.
Right.
My channel is Thinking Critical, so if you ever just want to get like and subscribe over there, we definitely love to have you over there.
Well, you have something better than a channel. You have a comic.
Yeah,
it's called Rags, and you guys should all go check it out from Antarctic Press.
Yes, absolutely. So check out these guys. They all produce really great stuff. And crap, smash the like button like Aunt May smashes the Hamptons.
Wow.
Spoiler.
Just get smashed.
Yeah.
I'm on my 5th beer.
No, but thank you very much. No comics aficionados tomorrow. Big credit to Wes, who's having a good time, and good on him. And yeah, and by the way, please, I do appreciate when people argue with me in the comments. I do. That I'm not one of those. I like it. So for those guys who do it, good for you. There you go, Doc. You should leave. What
I
do you got?
You demonetized with my phone ringing.
Nice. All right. Well, thank you very much. And I don't know how to say what Wes says, so have a good night, everybody.
Salamapo.
There you go.
And wash
your
your
pretty on the running kind.
There we go.